progressives should be psyched about it. And then later today, in this show, Trey Crowder, the liberal redneck, is going to join us, and that also ought to be a doozy. All right, a lot to go here, so Anna, get us started.
All right. The third Brett Kavanaugh accuser has identified herself, and her accusations were outlined in a sworn affidavit that was released by attorney Michael Avenatti. Now, Michael Avenatti had basically foreshadowed this case. He said that there was a third accuser and that this accuser was credible. And based on her very detailed allegations and the fact that she claims that there are people that she spoke to at the time that this incident occurred, it does appear that her accusations are at least credible and should be investigated. But with that said, let me give you the details. So this third accuser, her name is Julie Swetnick, publicly identified herself and alleged that Kavanaugh and others in the early 1980s spiked the drinks of girls at high school parties with intoxicants to make it easier for them to be gang raped. So here is an exact quote from Swetnick. She says, "I have a firm recollection of seeing boys lined up outside rooms at many of these parties waiting for their turn with a girl inside the room. These boys included Mark Judge and Brett Kavanaugh." Now, the first accuser, Dr. Blasey Ford, had mentioned that Mark Judge was also in the room when Brett Kavanaugh allegedly attempted to rape her. So he has now been named by two of the accusers. Also, in approximately 1982, I became the victim of one of these gang or train rapes where Mark Judge and Brett Kavanaugh were present. Now, the wording there is incredibly important because she never specifies specifically that they participated in the alleged gang rape. She says that they were present. So I think that it's important for her to clear this up, and hopefully she'll have an opportunity to testify about these allegations as well. She also says, "During the incident, I was incapacitated without my consent and unable to fight off the boys raping me. I believe I was drugged with Quaaludes or something similar placed in what I was drinking." Also, she says, "Shortly after the incident, I shared what had transpired with at least two other people."
Okay, so these are heavy charges, as heavy as it gets. And so now what Anna has been emphasizing throughout the week becomes an inescapable conclusion. How could you not have the FBI investigate? Now, again, it's an expanded background check that they have done in similar occasions before, as they did in the Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill situation. Because at this point, if these allegations are false, that is, if she made it up, as a lot of Republicans are charging now, it is the worst smear job that we've seen maybe ever. Mm-hmm. So if I'm Kavanaugh, we're not going to investigate this outrageous charge, and we're just going to let it stand, and then I'm going to go on the court because you guys are going to rush a vote, and then from then on, everybody's going to think that I'm part of, that I'm a rapist, attempted rapist, gang rapist, etc. So you've got to clear his name if he didn't do it, and then of course if he did do it, he shouldn't be anywhere. I mean, he should be in a court, but not on the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. And it would be the worst decision we have ever made in regards to the Supreme Court to put him on it, because there's no. Now, it's become more binary. It's less, hey, did he do that at a... I don't know. They were all heavy charges. But the Ramirez one, there is a question of memory, etc. This one, she's fairly clear, but not completely clear, on very serious allegations. And you can't do that to the guy if he didn't do it, and you can't have him on the Supreme Court if he did it. To me, it's so stark. How can you go forward without more information?
As I've said before, what makes me uncomfortable about this whole situation is that this is all going through the court of public opinion as opposed to having nonpartisan professionals look into it. And usually the response you get from those supporting the Trump administration, I'm talking about members of the base, not necessarily the politicians, is, well, the FBI doesn't do criminal investigations of rape. But no one's asking for a criminal investigation, although I think an argument can be made that state prosecutors should look into this as well, because these are serious charges. But putting that aside, the FBI would investigate this specifically to see if these allegations have any piece of truth to them, so senators can make the right decision in either confirming him or not confirming him. If I were accused of anything like this, and I knew I was innocent, I would be calling for the FBI to investigate it. But instead, you have Republican senators, members of the Senate Judiciary Committee, just flat out refusing to do it. They say, no, he's innocent, this is a smear campaign, and then they refuse to get the FBI involved. Why? If he's innocent, you should get the FBI involved. You absolutely should want that to clear his name. But what are they afraid of?
So there's two things here that are really important. One, if you're applying for any job at any company, and 3 women came forward and said to your prospective employer, oh, by the way, he committed sexual assault against me, including an up to gang rape. Your employer would pause before hiring you. At a bare minimum, if they're going to be fair to you, they would look into it and see, are these wild allegations that are totally made up for some reason against this guy, or do they have any chance of being true? What any rational employer wouldn't do is, don't worry about it. Who cares about rape allegations? Don't worry about it. Let's just hire the guy. And maybe later it'll be a gigantic legal liability, but who cares? No employer in the country would do that. Except for what? One of the most important jobs in the country? To put a lifetime appointment on the Supreme Court? It is now an argument you cannot make that we should rush one of the most important jobs with less checks than you would get if you were applying for a job at the local Walmart. Okay? So, and then secondarily, if you're asking, well, guys, the FBI thing's going to delay it, we're past that. There's too many allegations.
Are you really that concerned about the politics of this? Like, is a political win more important than ensuring that the newest Supreme Court justice is not possibly a rapist? I mean, come on.
Okay, but if you're asking, but guys, what could the FBI possibly find out? A lot. So they're not going to have a conclusion. The FBI does not convict anyone, and this is a background check. It's not even presenting evidence in a trial. It's presenting evidence to people making the employment decision. So what are the things that they could find out? Hey, Ms. Swetnick, who were the other people at the party? You are alleging a gang rape of yourself here. It's a super important charge. Do you have any idea who was involved? You say he is present. What does present mean? Was he at the party? Was he in line? Do you know if he participated? Those are really relevant questions. Can you name a single other person at the party? Then you go and see if they can corroborate. Was there such a party? Was she at it? Was Kavanaugh at it? Did anyone else know about spiking the drinks? How do you make a decision without knowing those? Either way, I don't know how you could possibly know for sure, which, unfortunately, by the way, yes, both sides are doing it. So the Republicans are absolutely sure he didn't do it. How? I don't know. And yes, there are people on the left who say, I believe them, period. And I get why they say that, but I don't think that's how this process works.
Well, but to be fair to the Democratic senators, they might say, I believe her, but they're specifically calling for an FBI investigation. Now, after the third accuser came forward, and since these accusations are so hideous, some of them have called for, the withdrawal of Kavanaugh as a Supreme Court nominee, but they are still emphasizing the importance of at least doing an investigation to figure out what's at the bottom of this, what's the truth, let's figure this thing out. Also, I want to give you a little bit of background on Julie Swetnick as well, so you kind of get a sense of who she is. So she apparently has multiple clearances to work for government jobs. So, for instance, she had clearances for the Treasury Department, the U.S. Mint, IRS, State Department, and Justice Department, other government agencies as well. And I don't know why someone would put their face out there with false accusations, given how incredibly cruel, Trump supporters and Senate Judiciary members, particularly Republicans, have been toward women who have come forward. And by the way, one other thing, just to give you another piece of examples or another piece of evidence proving that they've been cruel, after these allegations came up, Donald Trump just didn't care. and first issued a tweet. So I want to go to Graphic 9 and share that tweet with you. He says, Avenatti is a third-rate lawyer who is good at making false accusations like he did on me and like he is doing on Judge Brett Kavanaugh. So let's stop for a second. Avenatti did not make false accusations against Trump. Trump's own fix-it lawyer, former fix-it lawyer, Michael Cohen, admitted that he paid Stormy Daniels off after it was requested by Donald Trump. So where did he lie?
That's the very last thing I would say if I was Donald Trump. Because the charges against you that Avenatti talked about have proven to be 100% right. There's no one outside of you in the country claiming that you didn't sleep with Stormy Daniels. And now you even admit that you paid her hush money, but you claim it was because, what? You felt like paying her hush money on things you didn't do? Even your own supporters don't believe that. I don't think there's a single supporter of yours that believes that. In fact, instead they go, oh, attaboy! Way to sleep on with a porn star while your wife just had a kid. That's like what a real man does. Okay, so those are your guys, but you can't claim Avenatti made up stuff. He proved it to be totally right. So at the bare minimum, you should have enough intellect to not bring that issue up, but as usual, he's his own worst enemy.
Well, he also issued a statement. He's participating at a UN event, and he decided to bring this situation up, and here's what he had to say.
And hopefully over the next couple of days it will be settled up and solved, and we will have a Supreme Court justice who will go down as one of our greatest ever. Hopefully he's going to be there for a long time. I think it's really working out very well. I really do. I think it's doing well. I think people are seeing what a disgrace these Democrat senators are.
He just can't help himself. Under what definition would this be doing very well? I mean, you can say, hey, I can't believe the Democrats have attacked this poor judge, etc. I wouldn't agree with you, and there's other problems with that. But you could say, hey, it's been a mess because of the Democrats. But who would say that the proceedings are going very well? I don't know a single Republican or a single Democrat who thinks they're going great. But he can't help himself. Beautiful soft towels. The water was tremendously wet. These are going very well. There's 3 allegations of sexual assault, including gang rape. That is not going very well.
Well, what I'm always curious about is there a line that Donald Trump can cross with his supporters? Especially the women who voted for him and the women who continue to support him. And we came across a few interviews that really stood out to us. And the next video shows Trump supporters, women who don't really think these sexual assault allegations are that big of a deal.
Groping a woman, which is, what is that, at 18? I mean, how many guys, think that's no big deal? Even back then, it was, it's not a big deal. It doesn't just take away from his character and his job to do what he needs to do as a Supreme Court nominee. If he was pro-abortion, the liberals wouldn't be fighting this hard. We're all sick and tired of hearing about the Kavanaugh thing because it's not supported by any facts or evidence whatsoever.
Dr. Blasey Ford, who was the first accuser, alleged that the sexual assault took place when she was 15 years old. So it's not a big deal if a 15-year-old is groped by someone?
So look, I keep trying to, I don't know why, in an attempt to be overly fair, telling conservatives an acceptable way to say things. For example, she could have said, hey, that stuff is terrible. I wouldn't want that happening to my daughters. But it did happen with some regularity back in the day, and I'm glad it doesn't anymore. But we can't go back in time and judge the people within that context. That would be an intelligent way of responding to that if you wanted to defend him, which I do not, but she does. Okay? So instead, she's like, what's the big deal? It's just groping. God, you got young daughters right there. Don't put that message out.
But I actually want to touch on that a little bit because she does have daughters, and one of the talking points that you hear over and over again is, well, why is this coming up now? Why don't sexual assault victims come out and report it immediately? Well, can you imagine how difficult it would be if you were her daughter and you had just been groped or sexually assaulted, and you know that this is the way your own mother thinks about the situation. Your own mother thinks it's not really that big of a deal. Who cares? We're sick of hearing about it. Let's move on. I know I wouldn't feel comfortable going to my parents or talking to my mother if this is the way she genuinely feels about sexual assault. Like, the country doesn't take it seriously. We just don't. The Me Too movement happened, right? And we thought, oh, this is great. There's progress. But I think that the nomination and, the continued support for Brett Kavanaugh shows you that we don't really take it seriously. Because when political wins are on the line, that's really the number one thing that the people in positions of power genuinely care about.
So now let me defend the country and further pile on to Republicans. So because it's not me doing it, it's not my opinion, it's the polling. A new NPR, PBS NewsHour Marist poll is out, and my defense of the country is a third, 32% believe Ford, 26% believe Kavanaugh, and 42% are unsure who to believe. I think that is exactly right. I think that I lean towards Ford based on the fact that I work in the news business, and we have looked at this in 8 different ways, and I've got questions about the Ramirez story. I've got a lot of questions about the third person who just came out. I'm not saying she isn't telling the truth. I just literally have questions about some of her claims, like, to elaborate, right? So on Ford, though, she has corroboration. She's just, again, no motive. I mean, it goes on and on. I have good reason to believe that. But if you say you are unsure, that's a perfectly rational place to be, and why we keep saying over and over again that you should do an FBI investigation. On the other hand, a majority of Republicans, 54%, say that Kavanaugh should be confirmed regardless of whether Ford's allegations are true.
Oh, my God.
And remember, the allegations are not even groping. And I feel bad saying that because groping is bad enough.
My name is Joe Budden. Joe Budden Podcast, the exclusive sponsor.
Free healthcare for everyone.
Single-payer healthcare, debt-free college, and we are going to get money out of politics once and for all.
I'm taking a public pledge not to accept any corporate money.
Because the last thing we're going to do is go into another presidential election and run a corporatist against a populist candidate.
At some point, the buck needs to stop, and it's going to stop with us. It's going to stop with Justice Democrats.
So who are we?
People who do not take corporate PAC money.
We're relying on small donors.
99.9% of our contributions came from people.
You're a Justice Democrat, so you don't take any corporate PAC money.
I'm not influenced by money.
As a Justice Democrat, I made that pledge.
That's not a betting. Absolutely not.
I will go to Congress unbossed and unbossed.
We try to create a government which works for all of us.
That is what America's about, and that's what a representative democracy should be about.
We are just getting warmed up here. Vote for uncorrupted Democrats. The fight starts now, it starts today, and it starts with you.
All right, guys, I'm blown away by the number of people who have joined us in our membership drive. We're trying to get to 100,000 people. That's a lot. It is, as I've said before, improbable, but I believe that we can do it together. Now, a lot of you have written in with your comments as to why you became a member. I love these, so I wanted to share it with everybody. So let me get to it. Catherine says, I became a member on the first day of the drive, and honestly, I value that money more than the money I'm saving up for college. I know you care more about my future than for-profit colleges do. Thanks for opening up my eyes and making me a better person. And those are strong words, and I love you for it. Thank you, Catherine. Murray wrote us and said, joined TYT a couple of weeks ago, have been watching since Bernie in the primaries. TYT has helped me realize the importance of the progressive agenda, made a couple of donations to the Bernie camp, but this election season I decided to do much more. I'm hosting multiple phone banks for Beto and flying down to Texas to help get out the vote. Go TYT, keep up the great work. You too, brother, that is amazing. Jenkerbell writes in, that's funny. I finally did it. I signed up. Thank you, TYT, for your excellent, honest coverage that is not held captive by corporate interests. Thank you, Jenkerbell. Alinka says, okay, just joined at the activist level because for a moment I imagined the news landscape without TYT and I physically shuddered. I may not agree with everything TYT puts out, but that doesn't mean that I don't want TYT voices out there loud and proud. Also, the consistent messaging of getting money out of politics that TYT shouts out in every episode is 100% right on. Thank you. And finally, a shout out to Theater Goddess, who says, I recently became a member because I believe in an independent press that is accountable only to the people, and I wanted to be part of the #improbable membership drive. Thank you, all of you guys. Thank you for being part of Home of Progressives, and everybody out there, let's sign up today, if you can, at tyt.com/join. All right, back on the Young Turks. A lot of you commenting on in the member section about your if people were applying for other jobs, right? So Gabby Marita says, let's take this out of politics. If Brett Kavanaugh were applying for a loan, a mortgage, his credit history had this many red flags pop up, he would immediately be declined, and it would be up to him to correct any inconsistencies, not the bank. So that's an interesting analogy. Greg says, yes, have the FBI do an investigation. Hell, I had to go through a background investigation to become a rescue swimmer while in the Coast Guard. Okay.
Yeah.
So a lower standard apparently for the Supreme Court. Ruth and her pets writes in, and any ordinary person just wouldn't get hired. No one would even look into it. They would just say, lots of fish in the sea, why risk it? Unfortunately, she's right. I don't know that that's the right thing to do, but that is what the overwhelming majority of employers would do. Oh, you have 3 allegations of massive sexual assault. I'm done with it. Let's just get somebody else. They would never risk it.
Yeah,
right?
Just to add to these stories, my husband's currently going through a background investigation for a job, and it takes 3 months, and it is so extensive, it's incredible. And this is not for the Supreme Court. It's for a good job, don't get me wrong, but why are we held at a higher standard for average jobs when this person could be the next Supreme Court justice?
Yes, absolutely. So one last thing here. Opinionated writes in from the members' comment section. The same people who say that black people running from the cops deserve to be shot dead have no problems that a Supreme Court nominee is running from law enforcement. So that's a great one. Well, hey, why did he run? Maybe he was a danger. How about someone accused of 3 different sexual assaults? They could be a danger.
And for the people...
And by the way, don't get any of us wrong, including the person who wrote that comment in. We don't think anybody should do anything like that. We're just pointing out the obvious massive hypocrisy.
And there's also the double standard regarding oh, he was so young when this stuff happened, who cares, it's not indicative of who he is today. Those are typically the same people who make excuses for why they dig into the marijuana use of unarmed people who get shot and killed by cops.
Yeah, well, so that's a great point. Judge Kavanaugh, he was young, and what difference does it make? Trayvon Martin, well, he did smoke marijuana in junior high. And, of course, Trayvon was murdered. He was killed. He's dead.
He was also wearing a hoodie. Don't forget that.
Yes. Whereas Kavanaugh, how dare you look into his background at all? He's up for one of the most important positions in the world. That makes no goddamn sense at all. Anyway, thank you, members, for writing in with great comments. tyt.com/join to become a member. What's next, Anna?
All right. The Senate Judiciary Committee will be holding a hearing tomorrow involving both Dr. Blasey Ford and Brett Kavanaugh. And of course, this hearing is to hear their testimony regarding sexual assault allegations, attempted rape allegations. Now, at the moment, it's unclear whether or not the second accuser, Debbie Ramirez, or the third accuser will be involved in this hearing. But what we do know, or at least what we've had some hints about, are the various pieces of evidence that they plan to bring to the table for this hearing. So first, there's Brett Kavanaugh's 1982 calendar. That's right. He kept his 1982 calendar, which is kind of amazing. When I first read the headline about this, I'm just going to be honest, I thought there's no way that this calendar is authentic. Who keeps their calendar from 1982? But it does look authentic, to be fair. And when you look through it, it appears to just have mundane stuff. And the whole point of him bringing his calendar up is to make a point about how, there's no party in question here that describes or goes along with what Dr. Blasey Ford described, right? But
no, this is nonsense.
This is nonsense. Okay.
So, look, you take any piece of data you like and make it, and they're all data points, and we're all trying to figure this thing out. And there's some data points on, Dr. Blasey's side or Ramirez's side where I go, that's not that persuasive either, right? But the calendar has the parties that were planned out ahead of time. Oh, we're going to go to the beach for this such and such person's party, right? It doesn't have every single party in the middle of the summer that people threw impromptu, and oftentimes when the parents weren't present because they were going to drink illegally. Okay, the seniors might have been legal, but everybody else would have been drinking illegally at the time. That's not the one you write down in your calendar that your parents can see. You write, hey, I'm going to Nikki's birthday party. You don't write, I'm going to John's party that you guys don't know about, where we're at a bare minimum going to drink very, very heavily.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So I agree that piece of evidence is pretty weak. It's very likely that he wouldn't have put the date of that party down on the calendar. Now, when it comes to Dr. Ford Blasey, some fascinating stuff has come up. So let's go to graphic 18. So according to reporting, there will be 4 people who will basically not testify during the hearing, but who have written and sworn affidavits that they were told about the sexual assault previously. So 4 people submitted these sworn affidavits to the Senate Judiciary Committee saying that Christine Blasey Ford previously told them about the incident. So Russell Ford is one of those individuals, and he is Blasey Ford's husband. And he writes, she said that in high school she had been trapped in a room and physically restrained by one boy who was molesting her while another boy watched. She said she was eventually able to escape before she was raped, but that the experience was very traumatic because she felt like she had no control and was physically dominated. Now, there was another person involved in signing a sworn affidavit, and that's Keith Kogler. And that's a close friend of Ford and her husband, and he submitted a sworn affidavit saying he first learned of the alleged sexual assault in the summer of 2016. So he writes, while discussing the case of Brock Turner, Kogler said Ford told him she was assaulted in high school by a man who was now a federal judge in Washington, D.C., meaning Brett Kavanaugh. On June 29th, Kogler said Ford sent him an email saying the person who assaulted her in high school was the president's, quote, favorite for SCOTUS. And then he writes back to her, by the way, this is all via email, which is important, okay? So he writes back to her and says, I remember you telling me about him, but don't remember his name. Do you mind telling me so I can read about him? And she writes back, Brett Kavanaugh. There's another person, Rebecca White, a friend of Ford's who is also her neighbor. And she said that Ford first told her about the alleged assault in 2017 after she read a social media post White wrote detailing her own experience with sexual assault. So let's pause for a second. The timing's interesting there because remember, 2017, I think that's when the Me Too movement began. People started talking about their experiences, if I'm not mistaken. So that's probably why there was a social media post. And then here's what Rebecca White wrote. I was walking my dog and Christine was outside of her house. I stopped to speak with her. She then told me that when she was a young teen, she had been sexually assaulted by an older teen. I remember her telling or saying that her assailant was now a federal judge. And then there's one other person, but do you want to jump in before I get to the fourth?
Yeah, so these are varying degrees of credibility. The one, I want no reason to disbelieve any of them or Ford in this situation. It doesn't mean that Kavanaugh doesn't have a different recollection, etc., but when she writes after he is being considered for the Supreme Court, not after he was picked, but while he was being considered, if you're a Republican, you might say, well, at that point, she knows he might go on the Supreme Court, and that's why she might be talking about Kavanaugh. But remember, these go further back. So the ones that are in 2012, 2013, even 2016, etc., where she has no idea that he's going to be nominated for the Supreme Court and talks about this person who had done this to her, has more and more credibility. And then I would ask you, if you're skeptical, why do you think she was doing that about at that point a random judge that she had no reason to believe would be nominated to the Supreme Court? That she just decided to pick a name out of a hat and go, that federal judge that I used to know, I'm going to start making things up about him in the year 2012. That would seem awfully strange.
Well, the fourth person talks about being informed about Dr. Ford's sexual assault in 2013. So let me give you the details on that. Another longtime friend of Ford's, Adela Gildo-Mazan, submitted an affidavit saying that Ford told her about the alleged assault in June of 2013 at a restaurant in Mountain View, California. In fact, she says she has a receipt from the restaurant for that day.
So, listen, again, that's a detail that I don't find to be relevant, that she has a receipt from the restaurant. But what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. Okay, so they went to a restaurant. It's
at least corroborating evidence that they communicated that day. It doesn't necessarily prove what they were discussing, but it
doesn't even prove that it was her at the restaurant. So, anyway.
If she used her credit card to pay, it could be proof.
No, it proves that the person signing the affidavit was at the restaurant. In the receipt, it doesn't say, you had lunch with this other person and I will name her.
Okay, but when you're paying with your credit card for the meal, it says your name. It says the name of the person's, credit card. The name that's on the credit card.
It's totally irrelevant.
Yeah.
Okay, totally irrelevant. Focus on what is important, okay? So, look, we've now seen enough evidence that I think Kavanaugh has only one out, and Dr. Blasey vigorously disputes it. But she's not making this stuff up. She didn't make it up in 2013. She didn't make it up in 2012. You don't pick a random person out of thin air and start telling people and your therapist and your husband and your friends about this traumatic incident, and it's this guy. And just in case? Are there people all across the country now making up things about somebody who might get appointed in the year 2023? No, that's preposterous, right? So she clearly believes that this happened. She is genuine. It's not a political hatchet job. I'm not talking about the other two, and they have different fact patterns. We're just talking about Christine Blasey Ford, okay? And so the only out that Kavanaugh really has is mistaken identity. I'm sure that that happened. She believes that happened to her, but it wasn't me. But saying it didn't happen or she's making it up, it just doesn't match the facts. It just doesn't.
So there's one other part of this hearing that I want to touch on, and it's the prosecutor. It's a story that we talked about a little bit yesterday. We have more details today, so let's get to that. Senate Republicans in the Judiciary Committee had made it clear that they're planning on hiring a prosecutor, likely a female prosecutor, in order to ask questions of Dr. Blasey Ford during the hearing. And there was some concern about who this individual would be. Senate Democrats were especially concerned because there was a lot of secrecy and a lack of transparency surrounding this person. It's also very unprecedented to get a professional prosecutor involved in these types of proceedings. And so since the Senate Judiciary Committee consists of Republican men and Republican men only on the Republican side. Of course, there are Democrats on the Democratic, women on the Democratic side. They say, hey, you know what? We just don't want to seem, insensitive, so we're going to have a woman ask the questions. That is the argument that they're making. But here's what we know about her. She's a sex crimes prosecutor from Arizona. Her name is Rachel Mitchell, and she will ask Ford questions on behalf of Republicans at Thursday's hearing. Mitchell is on leave as chief of the Special Victims Division in Maricopa County's County Attorney's Office and has decades of experience as a prosecutor. She also identifies as a Republican, which I guess is fine, but I think it also makes it clear that they are planning on going after her. I mean, that's the fact that they're being secretive about all of this, the fact that they're, all of a sudden changing the terms of the hearing, which is something that Democrats have been complaining about. Why are they doing all of this? The fact that they're refusing to get an FBI investigation involved to get to the bottom of the truth. I'm happy that Dr. Blasey Ford is testifying, but I also hope that she knows, and I hope everyone knows, that it doesn't appear to be a fair hearing as it stands right now.
So the only part I object to, I object to two parts, and very significantly so, is them claiming that this is somehow a neutral person. No. She is a lifelong Republican who is going to question people on your behalf. She's going to question Dr. Blasey, and presumably Kavanaugh, but I'm not even clear about that, on behalf of Republican senators. So that's okay. That's fine. You could but just say it. Don't pretend like, we found this neutral person out of nowhere who's just going to do these just because she's an expert. Just because no, and it doesn't mean she's a lifelong Republican hack or donor, etc. In some like Kavanaugh, for example, is a political apparatchik. So when people like Chuck Todd say, was he being a partisan warrior by going on Fox News? Hey, snap out of it. The guy worked under Karl Rove. He worked as a political apparatchik his whole life. Kavanaugh is not neutral. He was picked because he's one of the least neutral people in the country. He's one of the most right-wing zealots in the country. So why are we pretending, right? So, but when they say, hey, Blasey Ford gave money to a Democrat once, I say don't hold it against her as that she's some sort of apparatchik like Kavanaugh. Equally here, the prosecutor gave money to a Republican once, but it was a normal donation. It wasn't like a Bloomberg or Koch brothers kind of donation. She's not an apparatchik. She appears to be a career prosecutor. Now, she's a career prosecutor in Maricopa County, worked with Sheriff Joe, presumably, for a long, long time, and didn't seem to object to that. But one thing is absolutely clear. Republicans picked her to represent them because she is a Republican and on one side, not because she's neutral. So Republicans in the Senate Judiciary Committee keep arguing that they don't need to get the FBI involved because this isn't a criminal investigation, and the FBI doesn't do criminal investigations, even though, as we've said a billion times, the FBI would be doing a more extensive background check, not a criminal investigation. But then, simultaneously, they're turning this hearing into basically a criminal trial, right? Because they're getting this prosecutor involved to carry out their line of questioning. Why is that? And we know why it is. First of all, they know that she's experienced enough to, paint this picture of her in her line of questioning. And since she's a woman, she's not going to have to deal with the same political consequences that people like Mitch McConnell, Orrin Hatch, other members within the Judiciary Committee would be concerned about. It would cost them politically if they were vicious to Dr. Blasey Ford, and they want to be vicious. So instead, they're going to get a woman to be vicious for them. That's really what's at the heart of what's going on here with this prosecutor. Now, go ahead. So look, I have two things to say about that. On the one hand, don't get me wrong, at some point they got to ask her, hey, what happened? And they got to ask about some of the details. So it's one thing to ask probing questions about that day because they don't have a choice. It's another thing to then to go further and say, all right, who else did you date and what kind of woman were you at the age of 15? Now, if they go in that direction, I think that's wrong. Whether the senators do it or the prosecutor does it. But don't get me wrong. They gotta find out what happened that day to the best of their ability. Now, on the other hand, it is incredible political cowardice on the part of the Republican senators to basically hide behind Rachel Mitchell's skirt and say, hey man, it's not me. It's not me. I got a woman. I got a woman to do it. So it's okay. I'm not guilty. No, just at least have the courage to represent yourself. They didn't elect her. They elected you to represent them. So, but then they don't have that kind of courage, so they're going to hide behind her.
Well, before they grow some courage or develop some courage, they might want to learn Mitchell's name, especially when they're going to do press conferences and interviews. So here's Mitch McConnell discussing this prosecutor and also giving her a different title during the conference. Take a look.
You don't have women making decisions about Judge Kavanaugh. What message does that send to the hearing?
We're looking for the truth here. I don't think because you happen to be a male, you're disqualified from listening to the evidence and making a decision based upon the evidence. As I said earlier, and I think you already know, we have hired the female assistant to go on staff and to ask these questions in a respectful and professional way.
Female assistant. She's a prosecutor. Okay, so there's that. But I want to...
So, look, a lot of people are outraged by that. I'll speak for myself. I'm not as outraged. It's just, it does speak to a frame of mind, right? We've hired a female. We know. You already said her name. Everybody knows. But it's okay. We're female, right? And she's now an assistant. Just call her a career. But you know why? My guess as to why he paused, you notice him pause there and went with assistant, which sounds a little degrading to some people, right? I'm not as, no, it's annoying. Okay. But I think that he didn't want to call her a prosecutor because they hired a prosecutor to go after her. So I think that's why he was like, female assistant.
Yeah, I'm not outraged. In the context of what's going on right now, that is the least outrageous thing that's happening.
Agreed.
So then you have Senator John Kennedy, who can't even remember the prosecutor's name during an interview.
I don't know that every committee member has given up the right to ask questions, but I know I intend to defer to, I can't remember the name of the prosecutor, Ms. Mitchell, I think. Ms. Mitchell, yes.
Is he the crypt keeper? Is that who that is? Okay, so look, to be fair to John Kennedy, he did once grill Trump judicial appointee in a terrific way. So
I don't care. That's a separate thing. He remembered his talking points during that interview. He remembered them real well. Look, and again, in the context of what's going on, these are the least outrageous things that these Republican senators are doing. But with that said, understand what they're doing, understand what their motivations are. They're not getting a woman involved because they want to be sensitive to the assault victim here, alleged assault victim. They're doing it because they want to hide behind her skirt and they don't want to lose political points by doing what they really want to do, which is hounding her, smearing her, probably asking her questions that are degrading. Look, the hearing's going to happen tomorrow. This is my speculation as to what's going to happen during the hearing, but I would love to take a bet and prove that my speculation is going to be right.
By the way, we'll be covering the hearings, tyt.com/live. You'll get to watch all the hearings and our analysis live on it throughout the day tomorrow. One last thing on this. The Anita Hill hearings were 91 and 27 years ago. At the time, every single person on the committee was a white male. And Mitch McConnell's right. Just because you're a white male doesn't disqualify you from having opinions on this issue. But what would also be helpful to the American people having a variety of perspectives, especially a woman's perspective in a situation like this. Not exclusively, but it would be nice to have some women in the room to ask questions as well. So will the Democrats have accomplished their end of it to some degree? There will be 4 Democratic senators who are women who will be participating because they're the ones on the Judiciary Committee: Feinstein, Kamala Harris, Hirono from Hawaii, and Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota. The Republicans, all 11, are still white males. But no, that's at this point, I suppose, unsurprising because that is the great majority of their voters. But this is the stunning fact. In the 202-year history of the Judiciary Committee in the United States Senate, the Republicans have never put a woman on that committee. Never, not once. There's 11 people on the committee, and they rotate. And through 202 years, they just couldn't find a way to put a woman on a Judiciary Committee.
Let's take a break. When we come back, Tomi Lahren will share her stupidity with us once again in regard to these allegations.
Look, we're doing interviews over there, and we've done some amazing ones recently. So now, of course, you know the person most widely considered to be the most progressive senator is Bernie Sanders. Why not back him during the 2016 primaries? Why be a Democrat at all? And we're in a time where you cannot, in good conscience, sit on the sidelines of history in 2017.
Consumer products sold under the Teflon brand are safe. DuPont did, in fact, ask EPA to make those statements, correct?
That's correct.
When I was pregnant with Bucky, I worked for DuPont around Teflon. They tried to blame me. They said it was something that I did. The more they would tell me that, the more suspicious I got.
You did see there was a substantial risk to the women at the DuPont plant.
There was no potential risk to the women. There was a potential risk to the fetus.
It's used in consumer products, manufacturing products. The applications were endless. These Teflon and Scotchgard chemicals permeated the living world. Today, every baby is born with Teflon chemicals in their blood.
DuPont and another company called 3M had been studying this chemical dating back to the 1950s and 1960s.
Did you work with a lot of other people that have been sick or died early? Carol Kaplan, Jim Broadwater, Joey Weaver, Steve Bailey, Lona Carr. They are aware of the risk of the product.
Risk is relative.
If I'm out here sprinkling things around, they arrest me for murder.
Lied, and they're still lying.
Everybody in this area, one way or another, is connected to bomb. You go dealing with somebody's livelihood, you're going to have problems. There was a discussion about, do we need to come up with something in our production that's not going to cause us problems? They conclude if we launch something new, it's going to cost us a lot of money. We have to stick with the devil. Was I getting paid? What do you think?
They'd rather lose the Republicans than have a progressive win the Democrats. That's how the corporate Democrats are.
Everyone, let's welcome Eurecia back at the end of the day to the Maury Show. 2 years ago, Eurecia was involved in one of the most infamous fraternity situations ever encountered. That's how it feels. Eurecia came here with self-restricted to find out if a man named Tracy was their biological father. Because Tracy was rumored to have 22 children. Take a look at this outrageous evidence.
For 30 days straight. So I'm going to try to do this for 30 days.
It broke my heart. He's the biggest part of my life, and that's why I felt so bad.
Steve, how is your exercise regimen coming along with your squats?
No, I did 100.
They all think that they're their mom. All you do. Hey, Euresia? You think you look like her?
Back on the air, Coach Jake and Anna. And you guys, so I'm going to go to the member section here. Third party time says, for those saying Kavanaugh was young when he groped young girls, why don't any of these reporters ask them, is it okay for him to lie about it now that he's an adult? Is it okay to have a Supreme Court hold people we can't trust be critical about their past? That is a very good question.
24-year-old accused. 20-year-old Asian age, 20-year-old
I think it is a
Euresia.
different thing to say, hey, come on, he was 17, and we wanted to say, oh, come on, of course he's lying about it now. Why would he be
So today, Euresia has returned.
And in fact, YNP7 then writes in,
about her
why are we even having conversations about sexual assault? This dude is blatantly lying to Congress on multiple occasions.
Year-old son named Elijah.
Bothered in court for life.
And she's desperate to prove to a man named Lorenzo that he is
Elijah's
Elijah's father.
very,
On the phone.
Miranda had access to television houses of three pedophiles belonging to Democratic senators in a confirmation hearing when he was appointed to be a judge in a lower level of the federal system. They asked him about whether he had received those. He said no. He had not.
Because his girlfriend.
He just found out in emails this year that he had received. In fact, one of them said he got it. So they're absolutely lying. In another case, in the case of Charles Pickering, he was nominated.
Obviously, everybody, we have to adjust that. Khadijah, hi Khadijah, how are you? All right, why are you telling your man that he's got the ball?
Because one of the babies do not look like him.
Is it all about the world?
Now we find out that he absolutely
gets around the whole thing.
That confirmation, and in fact was the primary person handling that nomination. And of course, Michael was one of the senators questioning him back then. Read the piece saying Kavanaugh has never appeared before the Senate and not lied. Every single time that he's come before the Senate, any of these hearings, he has lied. So I that perjury was enough to impeach someone. That's what they said about Bill Clinton. We have clear, overwhelming evidence of perjury by Kavanaugh. And they're just like, who cares? Let's promote him to the Supreme Court. And now, of course, with these heavier charges at play, it also questions his credibility. Now, one last comment here, hashtag TYT Live. Tweet to us during the show when it's live 6 a.m. Eastern. Street Bruce says, don't forget that Julie Sweeney's account of gang raping girls who were intoxicated is corroborated by Judge's ex-girlfriend who says he reviewed her reviews that Judge admitted to such activity. That's right. So now, read the New York piece. New York piece, it has a little bit more nuance than that, but the essence of it is very similar to that. It's just Judge Moore, Judge, by the way, got a great question. I just don't know. White Judge, I feel terrible about that. So, Professor Holman, like, no, it is White Judge. Anyway, so it's Mark Judge's girlfriend who went out with him for 3 years and said, no, they talk about, he told me about trying to get girls in a state where they couldn't say no, and several men being involved, etc. So that does match the third accuser's fact pattern. That's a great question.
They don't want Mark Judge to testify. They don't want the FBI investigation to do an extensive background check. Why?
Mark Judge backs up Kavanaugh's story. Why would you want him to testify? And why would put Mark Judge, your well-known friend and conservative, friend of Kavanaugh and a conservative right into this thing? Why would you put him in the room and make that part up if she was making it up for political gains? And Republicans, why does you're an operating witness for Kavanaugh unless you're afraid of what we might find out about what Mark Judge and Kavanaugh have done together? So all this does not add up to good news for Kavanaugh.
In the case of 2-year-old Elijah, Lorenzo, you are not.
See if that happens. But right now, to push this whole with this amount of evidence is crazy.
Thank you. All right. Tomi Lahren. I don't typically like to talk about her on the show because she's a clown, but her recent comments on Fox News need to be addressed. Tomi Lahren, a Fox News contributor, was on Fox News discussing the sexual assault allegations against Brett Kavanaugh, and she said pretty much what you would expect her to say, but probably worse. Take a look.
I live in Los Angeles. That's kind of the birthplace of this whole Me Too movement. It started out in what I believe is a great thing, which was bringing women out that had actually been assaulted. They were coming out and saying, this happened to me. We've been quiet for too long. And then it turned ugly. Then it turned to this. It turned into, I can make some politically convenient allegations. I can ruin someone's life. I can ruin someone's family. And we can do it all in the name of the Me Too movement. But really, it's Democrat driven. It's Hollywood driven. And I think the American people are really sick and tired of it.
Okay, so she thought, hey, Me Too is a great movement. She loves mentioning that she lives in Los Angeles. I wish she didn't. You know, you love living in red states, don't you? So please move back. But anyway, that's beside the point. And then she says it turned ugly. It only turned ugly, though, when it became a political liability for the Republican Party. That's when it became problematic. And by the way, you know what? If you're worried about it turning ugly and being used to smear people, the FBI should investigate these allegations and clear Brett Kavanaugh's name. Don't you want that, Tomi Lahren?
So, I guess that's her way of saying, I liked it when it was about Harvey Weinstein, who was a Democratic donor. It started in L.A., clear reference to Harvey Weinstein. We should have just ended it there when it was nice and political for us. Right. Now we find out all these Republicans have been doing it. Bill O'Reilly, Roger Ailes, Roy Moore, potentially Kavanaugh, and this is proven inconvenient for us. So all of a sudden, she's not as much into female empowerment or protection. And so, who actually made it political? It was the alt-right that went after James Gunn, the director of Guardians of the Galaxy, and they bragged about it. They said, yeah, we used the Me Too movement to try to get him because we don't like what he was saying on Twitter about Trump. They said it. So they weaponized the Me Too movement, and they brag about it. Roger Stone bragged about going after Al Franken before a conservative talk show host came out against Al Franken. And so, and you can go back further and further. Sam Seder, good example. They try to weaponize a joke where he was going after a pedophile, attacking a pedophile, and pretended that somehow he was for the pedophile in a thing that made no sense whatsoever because they wanted to target Sam. Now, do you know how little they have to have on someone to only find one tweet and one that doesn't, that's in fact on the opposite side and you have to try to twist it? And you're talking about politicizing the Me Too movement? That's what the right wing tried to do immediately, and repeatedly. So, please spare me your fake outrage. Aren't people exhausted with her?
And maybe there's a possibility that, yes, there are cases where it was clearly politicized and there was malintent. But there's also a possibility that for the first time ever, women feel comfortable coming out with their accusations against people in positions of power, whether they be millionaire actors and actresses, mostly actors obviously, but you know, there have been some actresses that have been mentioned as well, or whether they're politicians in positions of power. There have been Democrats and there have been Republicans. But if you thought that was worse, you haven't seen anything yet. Let's hear a little more from Tomi Lahren.
I personally choose to always believe the women in this circumstance. But how can you, as a woman, how can you say that just because we're women, we should always be believed? You don't think that women are capable of lying? You don't think women are capable of scheming? I mean, you work for Hillary Clinton, so I'm guessing you know that. But wow, you think we should just take women's word as gospel? That's infuriating to me as a woman, because I don't look at other women and say, I'm just going to believe you because we have the same biological making.
So, I don't think you should believe someone simply because they're a woman. However, I think that you should take it by case-by-case basis. What are the accusations? What is the corroborating evidence? And is the other side willing to do an investigation? Republicans in the Senate will not allow the FBI to conduct a more thorough background check. Why is that? So if you're concerned about that, you don't want to just believe someone. But the other side of that is to just not believe them, right? I don't believe her, or I do believe her. But based on what? Why don't we get some more evidence and then get to the heart of the truth? They don't want that, and they never discuss that. That's the funny thing. All these pundits, all these people on the right, they never discuss the fact that Republicans don't want to investigate. They don't want to look into the facts of the story at all. They don't want to figure out whether or not these accusations are true.
And the right wing purposely twists what people on the left are saying to their advantage. Now, I believe that some people do categorically say, I believe the women no matter what. But I think that is a tiny minority. I think that what they're mainly saying is, for so long, society, as a default, has not believed women.
Exactly.
And so they want to reverse that and say, as a default, we should respect the stories that they're coming out with and their courage, etc. That doesn't mean that we should go into a court of law and go, okay, that's a woman, that's it, she's obviously right and the guy is wrong, let's move on with our lives, we don't need to trial. No one is saying that, okay? And so here we have said 1,000 times, for God's sake, do a more thorough investigation, because if Kavanaugh didn't do it, then you've destroyed this guy's reputation unfairly. If he did do it, he shouldn't be on the Supreme Court. That is the actual position that people hold. And it's the same thing they do with Black Lives Matter. Oh, they're saying that no other lives matter. No, they're not. They never said that. They never said that. What they're saying is Black lives have not mattered in the past to law enforcement, unfortunately, the people in power in this country. And all they're asking for is for Black lives to matter just like any other life matters. But that's what Tommy Lauren's in the business of doing, is twisting people's words and attacking them and being paid to be...
She's being paid to do it. I mean, that's her whole thing. And it's worked out well for her and good for her. But just understand what you're doing, Tommy. Because you are spreading this message that, hey, you know what? If these sexual assault allegations come out, your first reaction should be, no, I don't think I really believe them. And I don't think that you'd want to be treated that way if you had allegations like this against someone in a position of power. You know? And you're spreading this virus that's been around for a long time, but you're helping to perpetuate it, that women are liars. They're liars. When they come forward, I mean, they're willing to come forward and be dragged through the mud and smeared nonstop for what? For what? What is Dr. Blasey Ford getting out of this? What's Deborah Ramirez getting out of this? What's the third accuser, Swetnick, getting out of this?
Yeah. And finally, she ironically says this on Fox News, where many other female hosts also attacked feminism for year after year, decade after decade, and then came to find out that they needed feminism to protect them from the people who worked at Fox News.
Yeah, all of a sudden feminism was real important when they were getting sexually assaulted by the executives and some of the hosts there.
And then all of a sudden, they wanted their legal rights, and which I don't begrudge them, and I'm very glad they came forward. We support them. We supported women either way and throughout. And it doesn't mean that when you go to court, you have to be believed immediately. It means that you at least have to respect a woman coming forward and not automatically assume that she's lying. If anyone should have learned that lesson, it's women at Fox News.
All right, we'll be right back.
We are on to something that is going to be amazing, but what we need is your help.
The number one problem is there's too much power in too few hands.
Every single problem that we have can be traced back to dark money.
They take large donors, they serve large donors.
So these handful of gatekeepers try to dictate everything.
Like all of you already know, they don't work for you, they work for their donors. So fire them and hire people who will only work for you, that say no corporate back money.
We are going to change the way we elect candidates in this country.
Uncorrupted Democrats. We're going to fight for the issues and win on policy.
This is incredibly personal. We need free health care for everyone.
We're fighting for $15 minimum wage, single-payer health care, debt-free college, and we are going to get money out of politics once and for all.
I'm taking a public pledge not to accept any corporate money.
Because the last thing we're going to do is go into another presidential election and run a corporatist against a populist candidate.
At some point, the buck needs to stop, and it's going to stop with us. It's going to stop with Justice Democrats.
So who are we?
People who do not take corporate tax money.
We're relying on small donors.
99.9% of our contributions came from people.
You're a Justice Democrat, so you don't take any corporate PAC money.
I'm not influenced by money. As a Justice Democrat, I made that pledge.
Absolutely not.
I will go to Congress unbossed and unbossed.
We tried
Government works for men. That is what marriage is about, and that's what a representative democracy should be about.
We're just getting warmed up here. Vote for uncorrupted Democrats. The fight starts now, it starts today, and it starts with you. All right, guys, I'm blown away by the number of people who have joined us in our membership drive. We're trying to get to 100,000 people. That's a lot. It is, as I've said before, improbable, but I believe that we can do it together. Now, a lot of you have written in with your comments as to why you became a member. I love these, so I wanted to share it with everybody. So let me get to it. Catherine says, I became a member on the first day of the drive, and honestly, I value that money more than the money I'm saving up for college. I know you care more about my future than for-profit colleges do. Thanks for opening up my eyes and making me a better person. Now, those are strong words, and I love you for it. Thank you, Catherine. Murray wrote us and said, joined TYT a couple of weeks ago, have been watching since Bernie in the primaries. TYT has helped me realize the importance of the progressive agenda, made a couple of donations to the Bernie camp, but this election season I decided to do much more. I'm hosting multiple phone banks for Beto and flying down to Texas to help get out the vote. Go TYT, keep up the great work. You too, brother, that is amazing. Janker Bell writes in, that's funny. I finally did it. I signed up. Thank you, TYT, for your excellent, honest coverage that is not held captive by corporate interests. Thank you, Janker Bell. Alinka says, okay, just joined at the activist level because for a moment I imagined the news landscape without TYT and I physically shuddered. I may not agree with everything TYT puts out, but that doesn't mean that I don't want TYT voices out there loud and proud. Also, the consistent messaging of getting money out of politics that TYT shouts out in every episode is 100% right on. Thank you. And finally, a shout out to Theater Goddess, who says, I recently became a member because I believe in an independent press that is accountable only to the people, and I wanted to be part of the #improbable membership drive. Thank you, all of you guys. Thank you for being part of Home of Progressives. And everybody out there, let's sign up today, if you can, at tyt.com/join. All right, back on the Young Turks. Trey Crowder joins us, liberal redneck. I saw that you claim, and I'd like to test your veracity on this, that your hometown in Tennessee has more liquor stores than traffic lights. That is correct, yeah, 2-0 at last count. 2 liquor stores, 0 traffic lights. Yeah, it's pretty easy to keep up with when there are no traffic lights at all. It's amazing. Okay. Yeah,
which part of Tennessee?
It's called Salina, Tennessee. It's in the north middle part. It's 3 hours from anywhere. They did install some traffic lights in the 80s, but people kept shooting them out in the middle of the night, so it didn't pan out. That's right. All right, I'm going to read just 2 quick comments from the member section, and then we've got breaking news. Of course we do. Okay, Kimberly writes in, you shouldn't automatically agree with a woman or an accuser, but you also shouldn't automatically not believe a woman or an accuser just because you're of the opposite gender or political beliefs. I would hope that would be obvious, but thank you, Kimberly. I'm going to just read it. It's Kat Rapinski writes in, Tommy Lauren is a year older than I am. I feel like she only gets attention because she's a pretty white girl who sides with white male privilege and the right. I have family members who love her. I voice my opinions, and the same members call me ignorant, too opinionated, because they don't like when I point out the holes in Tommy's and there's logic. Cognitive dissonance, anyone?
No, my favorite thing, because I relate to that so much, is when I get attacked for being too angry. But, like, have you guys seen Tomi Lahren's, like, segments where she talks about race relations especially? All she does is yell on camera. It's amazing. But, no, she's smart and level-headed. I'm too angry.
Yeah, no, I love that. You're too opinionated. We're listening to Tomi Lahren's opinions here, so hush up. Hey, yeah, that doesn't seem to make too much sense.
And by the way, sometimes I am angry, and that's a good thing. It's okay for women to be angry.
Yeah, by the way, I gotta read this one YouTube super chat here. King Cosmo writes in, whenever I read these guys, whether tweets, YouTube super chats, member comments, you know, just understand that's their opinion and what their version of things. When we present the stories,
those are heavily researched. Okay, King Cosmo writes in, Swetnick's testimony mentions knowledge of sexual assault during, quote, Beach Week, which happens to be marked down in Kavanaugh's calendar. That's our date. Okay, now, that's not verified by me.
Yeah, we have to look into that.
Yeah, so just take it with a grain of salt. You guys can look into it. We'll look into it, etc. So I don't know if those are the same things that they're both referring to. If they were, that would be an interesting note. Okay, but that's okay. It's a roller coaster ride. Here we go. New breaking news.
All right. In a breaking news story, it appears that there is possibly a fourth accuser in the Brett Kavanaugh case, and we know this due to an NBC breaking news story. So this is all based on a call that Senate Republicans had with Brett Kavanaugh, and the Republican Senate investigators asked Kavanaugh about the new complaint, and according to this complaint, there was an anonymous letter sent to Republican Senator Cory Gardner of Colorado, and it alleged that Kavanaugh physically assaulted a woman he socialized with in the Washington, D.C. area in 1998, and this is allegedly while he was drunk or inebriated. The sender of the complaint described an evening involving her own daughter, Kavanaugh, and several friends, and again, this was in 1998, and the letter is quoted in this piece, and it allegedly says, when they left the bar under the influence of alcohol, they were all shocked when Brett Kavanaugh shoved her friend up against the wall very aggressively and sexually, and that there were at least 4 witnesses, including my daughter. The writer of the letter provided no names, but said the alleged victim was still traumatized and had decided to remain anonymous.
So that's interesting because earlier today, Michael Avenatti came forward with someone else who had allegations about Brett Kavanaugh, and that was a person named Swetnick, and she had said that Kavanaugh and his friend Mark Judge had engaged in, quote, abusive and physically aggressive behavior towards girls, which, quote, included the fondling and groping of girls without their consent, and, quote, not taking no for an answer. So almost the same exact description from the early 1980s and in 1998. But understand, I mean, when this story just came out, it's breaking news right now. We don't know who it is, so then
and we don't have all the details.
And so it's harder to judge its veracity.
And one other thing that I want to note, to be absolutely fair, the third accuser, Swetnick, outlined the allegations in a sworn affidavit, and that matters. These are allegations that were given to a Senate Republican through a letter. So a sworn affidavit is different from a letter, but that doesn't mean that these allegations are untrue. But they are different in terms of how they're weighed in like a criminal justice system.
So what's the over-under on number of hours until the fifth one happens?
I don't know.
Because I can't even keep up at this pace. I heard about this one right before we went on, and I thought it was the one from earlier today, because that was also today. But it's not. It's a completely separate one. So, I mean, are they going to go forward with this hearing tomorrow?
Yeah, the hearing, Trey, they'll definitely go forward with. But at this point, it really would be unreal if they actually voted on Friday like they're planning right now.
So they will then. Because only unreal things happen anymore. Like that's just how things work.
Yeah. So if with now 4 accusers, sworn affidavits by Julie Swetnick, 4 sworn affidavits backing up that Christine Blasey Ford had talked about this incident many years prior to Kavanaugh being appointed, and then now people peeling back from the letters they wrote supporting Kavanaugh. A bunch of people, 3 new people dropped out today saying, okay, I unsigned the letter.
That's right.
Okay. In the middle of this madness and this, at a bare minimum, lack of clarity, if they go on Friday, yeah, we got enough evidence, I think we know what's going on here. Okay, he's a perfectly great guy. Let's move forward. We're voting yes. Madness.
And as it stands now, and it could change, but as it stands now, the hearing on Thursday will only involve the testimony of Brett Kavanaugh and Dr. Christine Blasey Ford. So Deborah Ramirez isn't involved. Swetnick, the latest, well, not the latest, but one of the allegations or accusers from today will not testify. And the latest allegation that we just talked about, we don't even know who this person is, so we don't think that she's going to testify. But one other thing that I do want to mention is that, previously on the show, we gave you two different examples of Trump responding to some of these allegations today, including Swetnick's allegations. And he was holding firm, still supporting Brett Kavanaugh. And now there's a new quote from Trump, and it appears that he might be backtracking a little bit, and so I want to give you that quote. On Wednesday, Trump said he, quote, can't tell yet whether Kavanaugh's known accusers are liars because he's waiting to watch the hearing on Thursday. Trump admitted that it's possible they could be convincing.
That is very un-Trumpian.
It is.
So normally he goes with the denials, the strong denials. The only reason he would say that, I'm keeping it real with you on decoding politics, which is what we do, is Republican senators have gone to him and said, hold your horses. We might get out of Dodge here. So don't keep backing him if we're going to backpedal and throw him under a bus. Because if we are, the more we talk about how great he is, the worse we'll seem. We're quote-unquote throwing him under a bus according to our base. Because that's what Rush Limbaugh is going to say. That's what Fox News is going to say. So apparently that memo is, in my interpretation, is circulating now. And it's got to be. Because Lisa Murkowski, a Republican senator, was already talking about there's got to be an FBI investigation. Collins and Murkowski and Flake have to be teetering on the edge here. Flake gave an impassioned speech, Republican from Arizona who's retiring, saying, I don't know how anybody would know if it was Kavanaugh was telling the truth or Ford was telling the truth. He's like, that's why we got to listen to the hearings, etc. It didn't seem like he was in a mood to rush to a vote. So they're going to lose. They might lose their own Republican senators. All they got to do is lose two. And if they do, then they'll have gone through all this pain and lost anyway. So Mitch McConnell is savvy enough to know how to count. Maybe Donald Trump isn't, but McConnell is. And if he's at 49 senators, that's not enough. Then they're going to pull Kavanaugh. So we'll see. But that's a very interesting quote from Donald Trump, who does not normally give quotes like that.
Exactly. All right. There is other news happening, so we're going to pivot to those stories. And I want to start with an update on something we covered yesterday. Yesterday, a video went viral featuring Donald Trump speaking in front of the United Nations General Assembly. And it went viral for a very specific reason. Let's take a look.
Today I stand before the United Nations General Assembly to share the extraordinary progress we've made. In less than 2 years, my administration has accomplished more than almost any administration in the history of our country. America's so true. Didn't expect that reaction, but that's okay.
Yes, so while Trump was bragging about his so-called accomplishments, the UN General Council responded by laughing at him. Now, it's fascinating to see the way his supporters have twisted this story on the next day, today. Nikki Haley has decided to go on Fox News, and she has a completely different narrative of what actually happened. It's incredible. Take a look.
I know you were in the room when the last happened. Sometimes the media can portray it as one thing, and it's not that at all. What was it like, and why that reaction?
The media's got this so wrong. I deal with these leaders every single day. I know exactly how they think. Do they love America? No. Do they respect America? Now they do. When he said that, they love how honest he is, and it's not diplomatic, and they find it funny. I mean, when he goes and he is very truthful,
they kind of are taken back by it. And
they're not used to it.
They're not used to it. But let me tell you, all day yesterday, they were falling over themselves to get a picture with him, to talk about how great his speech was, how strong it was. Whether he said good things about them or not, they love that he's honest with them. And they've never seen anything like it. And so there's a respect there. I saw that the media was trying to make it something disrespectful. That's not what it was. They love to be with him.
They thought he was strong.
What she just said was funny because of how blatantly not at all true or accurate it was, much like what happened with Donald Trump at the UN. It's funny when people say things that are just so clearly the opposite of actuality, which is why people were laughing. What else could they even have been laughing at?
So you make such a good point. And by the way, I want to add something to the conversation that I actually forgot to mention yesterday when we originally covered the story. When Trump was bragging about his accomplishments, remember, on an international scale, he hasn't accomplished anything except failure. So he pulls out of the climate accord, Paris Climate Accord. He destroys the nuclear agreement with Iran. North Korea, so far, it looks like there might be a little bit of progress, but so far they have not denuclearized, right? So there are all these failures on an international scale, and when he was bragging about his accomplishments, he was talking about tax cuts. That's what he was talking about. He was talking about what was happening on a domestic level. You're speaking in front of the UN General Assembly. You have been a complete and utter failure. You have made enemies out of allies, longtime U.S. allies. That's why they're laughing at you, because you're a failure. And by the way, domestic policy, you failed at that as well.
Yeah, no. Let's break down what Nikki Haley said. She said they laugh because they respect him so much. Wait, how does that add up? It's like, oh, there's Nelson Mandela. That guy was in jail for 27 years to gain freedom for his people. What? How does that make any sense? The second theory she had was they laugh because he's so honest. Really? Is that a thing that Lakers won the other night, 89-80? That's true. That happened. That's really funny. No, that's not being honest or being respected does not lead to laughter. That makes no goddamn sense at all.
No, yeah, I'm a stand-up comedian, and I can tell you that, yeah, honesty, respect, not major factors for a crowd when it comes to laughing at material or just in general. But yeah, I want to know if he believes this in his head though now. Like that happened at first, he was taken aback, but then he was immediately like, oh man, funny too. You know, I'm here just spreading the truth and crushing with these jokes. They love me.
Okay, well, so that goes to this next point, because he said today when Trump was asked about it, he told reporters about the laugh. Quote, "Oh, it was great. Well, that was meant to get some laughter, but it was great."
Oh.
But wait.
Called it.
So, yeah, you were right, okay? It was meant to get some laughter. Then why did you say, as we just saw on the tape, didn't expect that reaction, but that's okay?
Exactly. Oh, God. But he's so honest, guys. He's so honest. And he doesn't even have a butthole. Just like Kim Jong-il. No butthole.
The former North Korean dictator claimed that he had no anus. So, I mean, and by the way...
You know that he doesn't.
No, when the North Korean people laughed, it was because they knew he was so honest about not having an anus.
Yeah, and they respect his lack of an anus.
That's right. They're like, man, much respect on the no anus. Yeah.
So crazy.
In this case, he's literally the butt of the joke. And finally, this is why people hate politicians. Everybody knows why they laugh. Even the Trump guys know why they laugh. And you might hate them for it, and you might not like that the rest of the world laughed at your dear leader, but they clearly laughed at him because of what they viewed to be a preposterous thing that he said, not because they greatly respected him. You know that's not a thing. Not because they thought, my God, he is so wonderfully honest. It is true, guys. Isn't it true that he's accomplished more in 2 years than any other U.S. president, including Lincoln and Roosevelt and Washington and Jefferson, in just 2 years? Isn't that everybody agree at the UN? Everybody agrees.
I also think that part of it was that little "so true" he did, which is, that's a staple of his. But that one in particular, the way it came out, I think to me it sounded like even he didn't actually think that it was true, and that was like when he got the biggest laugh was after he said that. You know, like he wouldn't have been that bad, I don't think, if they was just like murmurs of laughter. But then he hit him with the "so true" tag and just brought the house down.
I love that you mentioned the "so true" part because I don't know, I might be wrong, but the way I interpreted it was that he probably heard the murmurs and then said "so true" because he said it in a weird,
definitely.
Oh,
and when he does that in America, the press is like, "Oh, okay, we have to be neutral, but we can't." No, that's it. Hey, maybe he did accomplish more in 2 years than Lincoln and Washington did. Maybe. Okay, we have to be neutral, right? But the rest of the world owes him no obligation, so they're like, they're probably thinking, we're not any students of American history, but we're pretty sure you're not the greatest American president ever in 2 years. So when you had "so true," you look like an idiot. I wonder if that's the actual reason why they laugh.
Okay.
And I gotta say one other thing though, because again, Trey, great point. If Trump, as he's claiming today, meant it as a joke, wait, are you saying it's a joke that you accomplished more than anybody else in 2 years? That you were obviously kidding because you're actually a buffoon and have accomplished nothing? That's why you made the joke in front of the United Nations saying, I mean, how ridiculous would it be for me to have accomplished more in 2 years than any other U.S. president? I was obviously kidding because I haven't accomplished anything. Is that the joke? Because if that's a joke, fine, we accept it.
All right, there's more. I have to go to the Kilmeade video because it's amazing. So let's take a look at that.
I like the president. I like his comment. I like the reaction. And then when he said, I was expecting that reaction, I liked it when everyone laughed afterwards. I was surprised, or should I say, not surprised, but taken aback by the way other people said, oh, the world's laughing at us. I think they were having fun. Well, I think the president made a statement that we're on a roll. That they always say that a good speaker's in the room. You got to react to what's in the room. So he reacted to what's in the room, and they kind of laughed with him afterwards on his comment. I thought it was a good unscripted moment in a very scripted situation. I thought it was great. And I couldn't believe how people twisted it.
Dude, just so embarrassing.
What? I mean, yeah, I don't. There's no way that any of them actually believes that's what happened, right? Or maybe they do. I don't know. But like the amount of cognitive dissonance to like convince themselves that that is what that actually was is unfathomable.
It is pretty incredible how they will cheerlead with him for him no matter what. No matter what.
Yeah. Ryan, I got news for you. Your leader is a laughingstock. The whole world laughed at him because he's a buffoon who makes outlandish, insane, Dr. Evil-like statements. Like, he claimed he invented the word fake. It's like literally out of Austin Powers. When the guy said, what was it, his father claimed that he invented the question mark. So when you do that in a situation where Fox News has not browbeaten, also maybe Freudian slip there, that might be true too, but browbeaten the rest of the press into neutrality, yes, everybody else in the world laughs because it's a preposterous, ridiculous thing to say that you're the greatest guy ever. I'm the greatest president. This idiot once claimed he had higher poll numbers than Abraham Lincoln. There was no polling during Abraham Lincoln's time. But when we laughed at that, we were showing him respect.
You know, little known facts about Honest Abe, hilarious. Civil War material, killed all the time.
That's right. Why was he so funny?
Respected and honest.
That's right.
Funniest traits a person can have.
And if there's one thing we know about Abraham Lincoln, people couldn't stop laughing.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, Trump addressing China meddling in the 2018 elections.
Wait till you get a load of this Tuesday.
Yeah, don't miss it. Come right back.
We have this idea in this country that when it comes to healthcare, more is better. You can't be too thin or too rich, and you can't get enough healthcare.
We all come to a similar conclusion that about 30% of U.S. healthcare spending is devoted to unnecessary services. And that's, $800 billion a year.
You don't have a significant blockage.
You have to remember that one person's waste is nearly always another person's income. And income turns into strong political defenses of areas that are classic waste.
We spend 2.5 times more per capita
than the average Western European country spends. But the part that I'm most worried about is the waste that actually hurts patients.
I was ready to have a stent put in, and I stopped him.
I see it every day in real human beings who get enormous amounts of unnecessary testing and enormous amounts of unnecessary treatment. And then the irony, of course, is that when we look at the Health Olympics and how we come out in the world in terms of health outcomes, we end up doing terribly. We're just below Slovenia or next to Costa Rica.
When we spend more, the outcomes are oftentimes worse. How can that be?
Life is so unfair.
Everything we do in healthcare is innately dangerous. It's sometimes extremely difficult to walk that thin line between health and harm. You step over it fairly routinely. I got a phone call that confirmed that I had cancer. And I said, life as we have known it is over.
If you add up medical errors, drug interactions, and hospital-acquired infections, medicine itself is the third leading cause of death in this country.
Of course I don't want to die. I'm paid more when I harm my patients. I'm paid more when I do more, even if it's not beneficial.
I don't want to live like a bitch.
When payment incentives are aligned towards more care, when their worries about defensive medicine are aligned towards giving more care, when their patients seem to want more care, and when there isn't really good evidence about what care is the right care, it keeps driving in the same direction towards more and more and more.
Hang in there. Every day is a miracle.
The big entitlement programs, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, with the vast majority being Medicaid and Medicare, they're on autopilot. They automatically increase year by year. By 2050, they'll be consuming over 70% of the total federal budget. Oh, wait a minute. Civil interest on the debt. You can't afford it.
If healthcare costs keep rising at the rate they've been rising for the last few years, we will bankrupt this country. We will not be able to afford healthcare for any of us.
Is everybody clear, please?
Will create a financial crisis of a size sufficient to destroy the United States of America. We have no choice. We will solve the problem.
My name is Sandra Hank. I've been with TYT for 3 years. I am a video editor and a photographer. The main perk for working for TYT is as being their main photographer, I get to photograph and sometimes meet some of the celebrities that come through. Susan Sarandon was amazing because she brought her dog Penny. Tom Morello is probably my favorite because I love frogs. Meeting people like Joss Whedon and Quentin Tarantino is some of the reasons why I got into filmmaking and photography was like a dream come true.
Young Turks, there's another story that just broke, but we just don't have enough time to prepare. But I will give you one line because it is hilarious. Trump at a press conference just said, if I wasn't elected, you'd be in a war. And President Obama essentially said the same thing.
Yeah, that was my favorite too.
I love that he's speaking for Obama now.
No, he didn't. But I have to be honest. I laughed because I respect Trump so much.
Yeah, that's so honest. Yeah.
It was such an honest comment. I had to laugh.
Oh, my God.
All right. Going to your comments from the members section. Captain Cornball writes in, is Nikki Haley after Sarah Sanders' job? Good question. Or perhaps more. Karen Shea says, Kavanaugh's trying to catch up to Trump on allegations. Only 14 more to go. Wrong, Karen. Now 13 left to go. That because there was 3, now there are 4, and Trump had 17. Gabby Marita says, so we're literally at they were laughing with me, not at me, with Trump at this point. This is like watching a bad sci-fi B movie about America's downfall, except it's real. And that's right. That's where we are. He's like, no, they're not laughing at me. They're laughing with me. Oh, that's so embarrassing. Yeah. Oh, my God.
Yeah, he is kind of the room of presidents, that movie from the Disaster Artist. Because he believes that. He sold it. He's like, yeah, that's what's going on here.
By the way, Nikki Haley started her defense of Trump by saying that the world hates us.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So the world hates us, But they really respect Trump, and they were laughing with him.
So they hate him, but they respect him so much that they laugh at whatever he says. Okay. I mean, George Orwell's got to be thinking, nailed it.
Yeah, he really did, and that's depressing.
Okay, so last two things here. Sweatniks, to the comment made earlier on YouTube Super Chat, our producers went and confirmed, yes, in Sweatnik's affidavit, she says, I've been told by other women that this conduct also occurred during summer months in Ocean City, Maryland on numerous occasions. I also witnessed such conduct on one occasion in Ocean City, Maryland during, quote, Beach Week, and Vox confirms that Beach Week appears on the calendars that Kavanaugh made. So, yes, that is apparently the same Beach Week.
Yeah, real quick, I just want to make sure everyone knows that the Senate, including Senate Republicans, were aware of Sweatnik's allegations last Sunday.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Wait, so he's like keeping sexual assaults on his calendar? Like he's like filing those in? He just, how else you going to keep up, you know? Like he's got a real full slate of those.
Yeah, I'm not sure the calendar proves what they think it proves. Okay, last thing, guys, here. From time to time, we tell you about our sponsors. This one is Squarespace, and as Anna and I have told you before, we both use it to set up our own websites. If you're running a business, you've got to have one, obviously, or a brand, or anything else that you're doing. In their case, they have pre-made award-winning templates and a 24/7 customer support, and it is super simple. I know because I did it. And so go to squarespace.com/TYT, but it's only for a limited time. You get 10% off. Squarespace.com/TYT to get 10% off. All right, what's next, Anna?
All right. Donald Trump spoke in front of the UN Security Council, and it was a meeting specifically regarding nuclear and chemical weapons. And he talked about a lot of different things, but he mainly focused on China and Iran. Now, for the sake of this conversation, we're going to discuss some of the accusations that he had for China. And before we show you the video, I have to give you an incredibly important tip. Please pay close attention toward the expressions on the faces of the Chinese representatives as he's giving this speech, because it is a good thing to see. Take a look.
China has been attempting to interfere in our upcoming 2018 election coming up in November against my administration. They do not want me or us to win because I am the first president ever to challenge China on trade. And we are winning on trade. We are winning at every level. We don't want them to meddle or interfere in our upcoming election.
We literally have a clown for president.
Yeah.
We have an orange clown who shows up every once in a while, goes and embarrasses us in front of the world and says, we're winning at every level. What does that even mean? Let alone the fact that it's not remotely true.
Also, just how oblivious do you have to be to even bring like election meddling up if you're not talking about Russia? You know what I mean? Like if you're him in that situation, like why even bring it? How do you not understand how that's going to come across? You know? Yeah. Like, oh, it's China now? Matter of fact, yeah, China's doing it totally, but Russia, no.
There's no way, right?
No, he wouldn't do that. Putin wouldn't do that. He's a good guy. Trump knows Putin. I go way back.
So this is like a photocopy of a photocopy, because at least back in the day, the Republicans had decency to come up with fake evidence when they went to the United Nations. And you remember, of course, the famous Colin Powell presentation about the Iraq War, and oh my God, here's our satellite images and pictures and charts and graphs. I mean, they're largely made up, but at least we had the decency to make it up. Now, the Trump administration is like, evidence? Who the hell would need that? I'm going to go accuse China of an incredibly serious charge and bring no evidence.
Exactly.
None.
And by the way, this is not the first time Trump's administration has said this with absolutely no evidence. Now, to be clear, if they do come forward with some evidence, then it is a serious issue, and I will definitely want to do something about it. Look, I want people to be clear. For me, this isn't a political thing, right? It isn't a Russia versus China thing, a Trump versus the Democrats thing. If we have a foreign government trying to involve themselves or meddle in our elections, then we need to do something about it. But remember, Republican lawmakers continuously vote down legislation that would help fund enhancements for our election systems, right? Give more money to the states so they can secure the elections. And they don't really seem to care behind the scenes. They really don't. And so let me give you John Bolton's statement that he recently said. So this is before Trump spoke in front of the UN. Bolton said the following, graphic 31. I can say definitively that it's a sufficient national security concern about Chinese meddling, Iranian meddling, and North Korean meddling that we're taking steps to try to prevent. Okay, so what are the steps, and what is the evidence that all of these countries are trying to meddle in our elections? Give us some evidence, and then tell us what those steps are. And so when reporters ask for that, the response has been, it's coming, it's coming.
No, I figured out what their so-called evidence is, and it is ridiculous. So at first, just like you said, Anna, I was like, wait, could I believe that China might do the same kind of meddling that Russia did? Yes, they have very sophisticated cyber warfare capabilities, and it's not like, oh, the Chinese government would never do that. No, they could easily do that, and they have the capacity to. They might have the motive to, and but unlike Republicans, we're not traitors. So if you said to me the Chinese might meddle on behalf of Democrats, I'd say, hell no. I'd actually say it in stronger language. No, thank you. We don't need your help. Get the hell out of our country if that's what you're going to do. And we would want a real investigation of that. Of course, the Republicans are like, oh, the Russians helped us? Who cares? Who cares? Well, move on. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all, right? Okay, so we know where your loyalties are. Anyway. But so I was like, what the hell are they referring to? Do they have some secret evidence? Almost never. By the way, John Bolton gives you a laundry list of the countries he'd like to invade.
Exactly.
He's like, oh, even though Trump doesn't even want to do it, but North Korean meddling? Can we bomb them? Can we bomb them? Iranian meddling? I'll make that up. But what Iranian meddling? What the hell are you talking about? The Ayatollahs figured out how to do cyber attacks better than we can? We can defend them?
North Korea did. So let's not underestimate.
It's possible, but
hear me out. There's mountains of evidence that Russia meddled, but Trump has proven definitively that didn't happen. So that's out of there.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's no evidence of these other countries meddling, then that must mean that they did.
Yeah.
See? Well, now you get it.
Now, so what did I figure out? So, first of all, Trey already fixed it, so I don't know why I'm still talking. Okay, so in a Politico article referring to an administration official, they said the official reiterated that the allegations that China was deploying its trade policy to target American farmers in Trump-supporting districts and states was their evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They're hacking farmersonly.com. Now it's personal. Now
totally. And did you not see that it's farmers only? What are you doing in there?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So Chinese hackers.
Okay.
Farmers only.
So do you understand what their so-called evidence is? Since the Chinese retaliated to our tariffs against them and put it on some certain industries, including farming, the Republicans, the White House, the Trump administration officials are saying, well, since farmers largely vote for Republicans and they did tariffs on farmers, that's our claim that they're meddling in our election. That's not meddling in the election, you knucklehead. Those are tariffs targeted against us because we did tariffs on them. They're the worst. We said, he looked like an orange clown up there, and the rest of the world laughing at him. The Chinese are going like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I love that guy's that street just like, oh.
Trump was so good. Look at it.
Watch, here he goes.
Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And also that exhausted look on his face, like, oh god, this guy. Yeah, I know. I've had that same expression.
Yeah, that guy's all of our spirit animal with Trump speaks.
All right. When we come back from the break, we will discuss what Trump had to say about Iran.
Go.
My name is Allison Carson. I am a national director with Wolfpack.
Pop on those 3D glasses, guys, because it's fucking crazy.
The goal of Wolfpack is to get an amendment to the U.S. Constitution that will allow us to have free and fair elections. It's not the only issue, but it's the first issue, and that's many in politics.
The goal of Wolfpack is to get a representative democracy back in this country.
The corruption issue affects every other issue. You name it. You can go down the list: education, the environment, the military, the economy. People at the top that are making the most money are the ones that are dictating all of the rules. That is the antithesis of a democracy.
Wolfpack has the most intelligent, plausible way to get money out of politics. We have the logical plan. So what we're trying to do is to use the power that our forefathers gave us in the U.S. Constitution through Article 5.
Article 5 is a specific procedure set up in the Constitution to propose amendments to it.
You have to work state by state. You need 34 states to make that happen.
Vermont, California, Illinois, New Jersey, and Rhode Island. We passed those states so far. One of the hardest parts of my job is that I have to follow her. Give me a break. My name is Mike Mineta. I am a national director of Wolfpack.
We have decided to move Wolfpack from defense to offense.
We travel from state to state constantly. This year, she was gone from January 2nd until, I think, May, without ever going home once. So that's dedication.
I get frustrated and want to quit every other week. No, I'm kidding. Kind of. There are definitely really tough moments. But the most amazing thing about it all is that we get through it together and we get stronger because of it, and we just keep each other going. Like Mike and I, when I'm down, he like pushes me forward, and when he's down, I push him forward, and we keep on going and work like a team like that. And that's what we tell our state teams, and that's why they need each other as well, because it takes a lot of tenacity and a lot of perseverance and resiliency to be able to get legislation passed, period, let alone to fix corruption in the most powerful country in the world. When we passed in California, that was my first win that I got to personally enjoy. That was amazing. I think I was hooked, officially hooked at that point.
I was in Rhode Island when we passed. I was probably there every single day that week, just standing outside, holding up signs, waiting for legislators. 2 years of really, really hard work condensed into this one amazing moment of victory.
You have those moments. It literally makes everything that we do so much more rewarding. If people are truly sick and tired of sitting by and watching what's happening to this country, and if people are truly sick and tired of just talking about it and tweeting about it and liking it and sharing it on Facebook, it's time to take action and get out on the streets and get involved and learn how to get involved even if you don't know how to. You cannot just complain from the sidelines in this day and age. There is too much going on. We need to do this now. There is no time to waste. Anybody who wants to get involved, is curious, is a little scared, but would like to know how to possibly start learning how to make this happen should go to wolf-pac.com, wolf-pac.com, and sign up to volunteer. No experience necessary.
The facts are on our side. The history is on our side. The public opinion is on our side, both on the policy and the procedure. We're going to find more success, and we will get this amendment.
There's no other option for me.
All right, back on the Young Turks. First member comments. Robert Strickland writes in, better not threaten China. This isn't North Korea. It's a fair point. Buffalo Spirits writes in, does Trump not realize when he's not making a speech to his base? No, he doesn't. Of course not. No. Yeah. He thinks he's at one of his rallies. He almost did this wrestling walk around. We were talking about that in one of the breaks, that same thing, because, I mean, yeah, he forgets that he's not in front of his people, all the time. So I'm going to go to Twitter next. Navinix writes in, I vividly remember William Wallace's passionate speech in Braveheart ending with Scottish freedom fighters laughing their asses off on their horses. Yeah, and then that made me think, like, 7 years ago. Right. Stop it, Abe! Stop it! We have nothing to fear but fear itself. Good one. All right, anyway. Last one here. Blue Atlas 88 writes it on Twitter. Can we stop winning? This is getting too much to deal with. Hey, we are. We're exhausted from winning.
Brett Ehrlich has this shirt, and it's my favorite Brett Ehrlich shirt, and all it says, plain shirt, all it says is, "Are we great yet?" Because, I mean, you got to read that and laugh because you respect it so much.
Right. That's so honest. That's all right, next.
All right. While Donald Trump was speaking in front of the UN, he brought up some of our conflict with Iran. Here's what he had to say.
Iran's leaders sow chaos, death, and destruction. They do not respect their neighbors or borders or the sovereign rights of nations. Instead, Iran's leaders plunder the nation's resources to enrich themselves and to spread mayhem across the Middle East and far beyond. In the years since the deal was reached, Iran's military budget grew nearly 40%. The dictatorship used the funds to build nuclear-capable missiles, increase internal repression, finance terrorism, and fund havoc and slaughter in Syria and Yemen. We cannot allow the world's leading sponsor of terrorism to possess the planet's most dangerous weapons. We cannot allow a regime that chants death to America and that threatens Israel with annihilation to possess the means to deliver a nuclear warhead to any city on earth. Just can't do it. We ask all nations to isolate Iran's regime as long as its aggression continues.
It seemed like a pain child reading a book report. I gotta read this thing. It's just so many words.
The best things about all those clips are the Office style reaction shots they do of the friends from the other countries. Yeah, they go to Iranian Jim sitting over there like.
It would be great if they made eye contact with the camera.
Right, yeah.
Right? Yeah. No, but I want to address some of the things he said, because with the exception of his comments regarding Israel, if you take Iran out of it and replace it with America or United States, it would certainly apply to some of our actions. So he mentions that Iran sows chaos, death, destruction. What has the United States done in the Middle East? Right now, what is the United States helping Saudi Arabia do in Yemen? He also mentions that Iran has plundered the nation's resources. You just made public lands private for the purpose of drilling for oil. Are you really, you're going to accuse, maybe they do that, but you can't be like this self-righteous authority on plundering the nation's resources when you do that, you advocate for that, and you don't believe in climate change, okay? And then he also mentions Iran. Can you believe this? Iran increased their military budget. Can you believe that? By 40%. He said that. You just increased the military's budget in your budget proposal.
And bragged about it. And
we're the good guys, though. That's the thing.
Yeah.
We're the good guys, they're the bad guys, so
it's okay.
It's all different.
Yeah. So, first of all, it's not true that they increased it by 40%. Of course not. Nothing he says is ever true. But they did increase their defense spending, but so did we. Our defense spending is leagues higher than theirs. We spend way more than Iran does. Iran it's the whole speech, Anna's 100% right, was a classic case of projection. Can you believe anybody would create chaos in the Middle East?
That's all
we invaded Iraq and created ISIS, and hundreds of thousands of civilians died. And mayhem. I mean, look, again, the Iranian government does a lot of terrible things, and they do fund Hezbollah and Hamas to some degree. They are allies of Assad. So it's not, nobody thinks oh no, the Ayatollahs have everybody's best intention in mind, and no, they would never plunder their natural resources or be corrupt. I'm sure that they're good religious folks who help the poor and the needy. No, nobody thinks that. But the nerve of Donald Trump to give that speech, given what he has done and what our country has done, and again, this is not to his base. He's not in a rally in the middle of Missouri. He's talking to the United Nations, and everyone in that room knows what we do. And him especially is talking about, can you believe they increased their defense spending?
The whole world had to be Jim in office at that point. Going, right? Do you think that like some of his fascination with Iran has to do with Obama making that deal with them? Like because of with the Obama, like anything that Obama's related to at all, he just can't. He locks in on that and does the exact opposite of it. Because with like North Korea, it's like, well, we need to have a dialogue. Why wouldn't we be friendly with them? Why wouldn't we want that type of? But Iran wants to negotiate and just nothing at all. Like, what's the difference?
I think that he does want to go after anything Obama accomplished during his presidency, but more importantly, when it comes to Iran, I think that his cozy relationship with Netanyahu probably influences him more.
Yeah.
But that's just my thought.
No. I think I have a pretty decent sense of what's happening in this instance. So it reminds me a lot of how Cheney tricked Bush. You find a soft spot, and so and it's for Cheney. He kept talking to Bush about how your dad couldn't get Saddam, right? But you will be. Are you strong enough to be able to do what your dad couldn't do? Because Bush had a deep insecurity that he couldn't live up to his dad. So and when they finally got Saddam, they claimed that they got his pistol. I don't know if it's true or untrue, but they gave it to Bush, and he would show it to like a little kid. He'd show it to everybody who came to the Oval Office. Look, I got Saddam's pistol. And sometimes he'd even talk about how his dad couldn't do it. So that's how. But that's not why. That was just a way to trick the president into doing it. But the people who wanted to go to war, because they're neocons, they wanted to go for what they view to be geopolitical strategy, and they think, oh, we're going to have boots on the ground in the Middle East. And especially if peak oil was coming, there's a lot of different factors. The oil companies profited greatly, defense contractors profited greatly. Yes, Israel would like us to do their bidding for them in the Middle East and attack all of their enemies. That was some factor involved in it. And now the same exact neocons, it's literally John Bolton, same guy, right? So the reason we are so aggressive against Iran and we ripped up that deal is because the neoconservatives want to go to war with Iran under any and all circumstances. But how do they get Trump to believe it? They go, Obama did the deal. Right. Well, aren't you better than Obama? Right. Well, shouldn't you do the opposite as Obama? And then Trump, being even dumber than Bush, is like, oh, yeah. Oh, no, this is a terrible deal. I make the best deals. Obama makes the worst deals. Let's show him what a good deal. Wait, what's your deal with Iran? But you were supposed to rip it up and come up with a better one. And you were supposed to stop their program. He's talking about how they have a nuclear program now. By the way, lie. They don't. Not true. They don't have one. He talks about how they're developing intercontinental ballistic missiles. Not true. They don't have them. Okay? Yep. And so, but okay, let's assume that you're right, Donald Trump, that they are developing nukes. Well, what's your plan to stop them? Where's your deal to stop them? Because Obama did have a deal to stop them. The whole world agreed. Your buddies in Russia agreed. Europe agreed. China agreed. We stopped their nuclear program. It was a great deal. You ripped it up like an idiot because a guy with a funny-looking mustache came in who wants to start a war with Iran and convinced you that you'd be better than Obama if you went after Iran.
So experts and journalists who have been covering U.S.-Iran relations specifically mention over and over again that this isn't about invading Iran, but it is about regime change. And the strategy coming from Trump's administration is not military intervention, but more about convincing the people of Iran to rise up and call for or demand regime change.
Nonsense.
You don't think that's true?
No.
They're listening to Trump? Like
No.
No. They're doing propaganda, and
the journalists are.
No,
the journalists are saying that the Trump administration is basically sowing chaos within Iran to convince the Iranian people.
No, I know. No. I'm not saying what the journalists are saying is nonsense. I'm saying that plan is nonsense.
Okay.
Right. The plan, to Trey's point, the plan it's like, hey guys, you guys, everybody in Iran agree with Trump, right? Let's rise up against the mullahs. Yeah. You're going to get 0 people. You're going to get negative 17 people in Iran to agree to that, right? So the people in Iran are fed up with their government because it's dictatorial and corrupt and all those things. And from time to time, they get really angry about an election, etc. But it hasn't worked. It doesn't tip over and then all of a sudden magically get the mullahs out, etc. No, when that doesn't work, they're going to go to war. And think about even if it did work. That's kind of what happened in Syria. How's that working out for us? So what happened? ISIS came in, absolute chaos in the Middle East. And you want to do that in Iran? So no, these neoconservatives are not only immoral and evil people, they're also some of the dumbest people on the planet. So it's just with them and trying to convince Bush and Trump, it's dumb and dumber. Okay, we gotta go. Okay. Bye-bye. remind everybody, tomorrow we will be covering the Kavanaugh hearings live starting at 10 o'clock Eastern. We'll cover every minute of it. You'll get to see the hearings, and we will do live play-by-play. We've got most of our TYT crew coming in here. I'll be doing some of the coverage. John Idarola, Anna Kassarian, Ben Mankiewicz, Brett Ehrlich, and we're bringing in some legal experts as well. So don't miss that. TYT.com/live. And obviously, if you miss any portion of it, or if any portion of any of our shows, that's available to members anytime they want, at TYT.com/join. Later today, we're going to have old school and post game as well. But now I have a great guest for you guys. Joining me now, Nomiki Konst, running for a new office, and this is exciting. You broke the news, Nomiki, yesterday on Aggressive Progressives. But for those that didn't hear, what office are you going to run for?
I am running to be the next public advocate of New York City.
All right, I love it. So let's talk about it just real quick before we get to your agenda, which I care most about. For people who don't know and who didn't see yesterday's program, what does the public advocate do in New York?
So this is fascinating because the public advocate is a fairly new position for New York City, and every single person I ask in New York, those who are in politics and government, have a completely different interpretation. So I went back to the charter in which it was designed in the late 80s, and the first public advocate was in 1994, and really the public advocate was there to represent a population of New Yorkers who were being underrepresented in the city council and in New York City government. And it has expanded its roles, or non-roles, to be honest, because they don't have a voting seat in the city council, to not just push the agenda in the city council and in the city and beyond, set the agenda on behalf of the public, but also to hold them accountable. They're also in charge of the New York City Media Division, which is an unknown. Most people don't know about that, and I think we could talk a lot about that and what I could do for that commission. But they have a fairly significant budget. There's a lot of attention on them. They're the second to the mayor. In case something happens to the mayor, of course, the public advocate would become mayor. I do not want to be mayor. I'll make that very clear right now. But that is the basic role of being the public advocate. It is the check and balance to New York City government, but it is also the advocate for the people, setting the agenda.
So my guess is that you'll run against a lot of career politicians, whereas you have been an investigative reporter for the Young Turks and a talk show host on Sirius Satellite Radio and a progressive activist. So I just want to talk about whether a politician who knows the system, and that's going to be their argument, would make a better public advocate, or someone outside the system who's a progressive would make a better advocate for the people of New York.
Well, I believe that this office really should be independent of politics and political systems. I'm not tethered to a political machine. I'm not tethered to special interests. In fact, I'm completely independent of that. Sure, it would be helpful to know how a bill goes through city council and all the little tricks that can happen along the way, but that's not really the job of the public advocate. The public advocate is there to push city council to write bills, pass bills. In fact, the public advocate can introduce bills. They just can't vote on bills. I think that the role really is to be a check on the system, and you need somebody who is not part of the system that broke the system, meaning can be an outsider to have a fresh perspective on this and also hold the system accountable.
Yeah, look, obviously I have a strong perspective on this, and I worked with Nomi, and she was great. But I think to me, it makes perfect sense that you would have an outsider do this role, because it's a check on politicians. So we don't need another politician to do it. We need someone like you who has challenged the Democratic Party from the outside, who then went and was part of the Unity and Reform Commission to try to reform it from the inside. It seems like, I don't know if you got lucky because Letitia James won her seat and now this seat's going to be open, because it seems like it was tailor-made for your resume. So,
and I think that's really why I'm running for this. I don't want to be mayor. I don't want to be in council. I don't want to be in Congress, really. I saw the opportunity here to talk about the tremendous amount of public conflicts of interest that are happening in New York City government and New York State government, to talk about the injustice that's happening on the ground in every single community. I mean, we have a political machine now in New York, or several political machines, that are now, people across the country are learning about the stuff that's happening behind the scenes. Now, if you had a public advocate that went in, and this is probably going to give you a lot of trouble, and I'm going to have a lot of targets on my back, but if you had somebody that could create a grid of the conflicts of interest and how that affects the budget, and how that affects contracts, and how that affects relationships within city government and with politicians, exposing that, that's what I think the public advocate has the ability to do. I am willing to take my investigative skills into this office, into the campaign as well. I'm going to be doing this along the way while I'm campaigning. As I learn about NYCHA, New York City public housing, I'm going to go in and I'm going to investigate. If I learn about conflicts of interest in certain agencies, I'm going to do whatever I can within my ability to investigate in the campaign. And then, of course, with the budget of the New York City government, I hope to amplify that even more so. There's the ability to sue government agencies with outside counsel.
I love you too.
That can be put to work, really digging and finding where our city government has gone wrong. Because let's not forget, New York City has the worst income inequality in the country at the worst moment in history.
Yeah, so I want to get to your agenda in 1 second, but look, again, I'm not pretending to be neutral here. As you were talking there, Nomi, I thought, oh man, they're in a world of trouble if you get into that seat. So you're going to get a ton of attacks because your specialty is looking into conflicts of interest. So if you're in a role where you could look into the conflicts of interest of politicians who are not doing right by the people, oh boy, buckle up. Okay, so I want to explain. I want to explain to people that you've already set up a website, nomikicons.com, and there's a way to donate to tinyurl.com/donate4nomi, and that's the number 4, and it's obviously NOMI. So Nomi, if people give to that, does it get multiplied by 6 or not yet? How does that work?
So if you are a New York City resident and you give to my campaign up to the limit, which is around $175, I will get $6 for every dollar that you contribute. That is the matching fund system in New York City. That is for the general election. Of course, when a special election is called, the rules will change a little bit, but we do have matching funds in New York City for New York City residents. It's perfect to level the playing field for small dollar donations, to really make sure that local New Yorkers have a real role in setting the agenda and supporting the people that they want in office. I can also, of course, take donations from outside of New York City, which, if you'd like to donate, I will, if you're not a corporation and you're not a corporate PAC, I will absolutely accept your donations. But, this is really to ensure that there's a better playing field for all New Yorkers to run for office. And it's a great plan, and I think they should nationalize it.
This is a perfect role for an aggressive progressive, and that's exactly what you are doing. Okay, so now, are you considering a $30 an hour minimum wage?
I am. We have an incredible policy team that's working very hard right now, advising me on what's doable and what's not doable, and where we can push the agenda, and also how we pay for it, because that's, of course, what everybody's going to ask. But we do have the ability in New York to really push the limit. It is the largest city in the country. It is a city that sets so much in terms of debate and policy agendas globally. I think New York is incredibly unaffordable. I mean, there are almost 1 in 8 New Yorkers. It's about 400,000 New Yorkers live in New York public housing, and it is a mess. I mean, we have mold in the housing. We have a rat situation. There's lead in the water, in the paint. It is unlivable. It's almost the size of this is a population almost the size of Boston right now.
Yeah.
That is the kind of injustice that we're dealing with. So when we're starting there, and we are saying to New Yorkers who really the cost of living here is set for very, very wealthy people, that $15 minimum wage is what you're going to survive on. That's a path to poverty. If you want to survive in New York City and you have a family, if you want to qualify to purchase an apartment, good luck. But to rent an apartment, you need to make, in some cases, in parts of Manhattan, 80 times 1 month's rent to just qualify for that apartment. So $30 minimum wage is the basic livable wage, and I'm calling for that by the end of 2020 in New York.
having lived in a lot of different American cities, it is true that New York is, especially Manhattan, is absolutely unlivable unless you're incredibly wealthy. So it's a good point. We have about a minute left, Noe, but I really want to get to the other one that really jumped out at me. Free subways?
Yes. So we have a subway problem. Like, when I say problem, I mean, there was, in Brooklyn, at the Atlantic Station, the ceiling collapsed a couple of days ago onto people. That is how decrepit our subway system is. We pay in as taxpayers into the subway system, into the MTA fund. The money is not being allocated to fix the subways, but we pay for it so that we can, fix it and fund it. This is a criminal justice issue. The money is there. We have to take a serious look at our budget. And I think that, obviously the governor and the mayor have had some difficulties in taking responsibility for the funding of the subways. But I do think it's important to have another voice out there saying not only should we be fixing our subways, but we should be making it free for New Yorkers. I mean, maybe tourists can pay a different price, but New Yorkers, this is a criminal justice issue as well. So, you should have to choose between your MetroCard and a meal, $2.75 for a swipe on a MetroCard, and you have kids jumping turnstiles and getting written up, and then suddenly they're in Rikers, and their lives are ruined. This is an incredible problem in New York. The subway epidemic is hitting working people and people in poverty the most. If you're a mother and you live in an outer borough, and you're a single mother and you have to pay for childcare, and you have to make it into work and you're late, that could cost you an hour's wage, that could cost you your job. This is the lifeline of New York, and we need to fix it.
Yeah, it's amazing what happens when you look at something from the public's perspective rather than the powerful perspective. The people in power go, oh, no, we can't do any of these things. But as you lay it out there, it seems like that would be exactly what a public advocate would at least fight for. So my guess is that the Turk's audience and that progressives across the country are going to be awfully excited about this race. So NamikiCons.com, everybody please check it out. We'll obviously have the links down below if you're watching later on YouTube or Facebook. Nomi, great to have you on the air again and fighting for progressives again.
Thank you so much, Jake, and thank you to the whole TYT family, always.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll be right back. We've got another great guest for you.
The United States economy has never been better. Monetary policy is spectacular. Everybody thought Jamie Dimon was the king of Wall Street last week. Well, it might be Kevin Lewis now. Thanks to crowd. The best sales force out there is Merrill Lynch, and now it goes to BA. It's pretty basic.
I do think this is a buying opportunity. We're going to see a stabilization and just a tremendous snapback.
The Occupy Wall Street movement is not a spontaneous protest against economic inequality. This is what we mean by the establishment press. It is a well thought out campaign to bring down the infrastructure of this country. The embarrassment is that I'm given credibility in this world because of the disappointment that the public has in what the news media does. I'm the former chairman of the Veterans Union, and I learned a little bit about the cost of war. What the president is trying to do, and I agree with him, is to do everything that we can without going to war. So what you're saying to your critics, then I'm talking about Democrat critics who say, you know what, he's really just a socialist pacifist.
I very rarely read in any coverage of Bernie that he's a socialist.
Bernie Sanders is a socialist, for God's sake.
Most analysts are saying that Hillary Clinton's going to win in a landslide.
I continue to believe Mr. Trump will not be president. We got Trump at 279, 259. We're not going to be polite anymore. You know what we're going to do? We're going to fight back. Fight for a free and independent media. We're done with politeness. Fight back. The more we put together, the best investigative reporting team in the country. TYT will give you the force, and let them go. I'll unleash real journalism in the country. We don't need anybody else anymore but you guys. TYT Network.
patreon.com/go. This is going to be amazing. Welcome back to Rebel Headquarters. Now let's bring in Phil Price. He is running in North Carolina's 11th district against one of the most right-wing people in the country, Mark Meadows, who is chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. Freedom is code word for tax cuts for the rich. In this particular case, Phil, welcome to Rebel Headquarters.
Oh, thanks for having me back, Jay. How you doing?
No problem, no problem. Good to have you back, brother. I still remember the woodworking stories. I think my co-host, Anna Kasparian, would enjoy that because Phil's business is antique reclaimed lumber, and we talked about it last time. And so
we also played a song for you.
That's right, I remember. All right, so first of all, Phil, I don't know if you know this, but you're in amazing shape, and I'll tell you why. Because President Trump has, quote, guaranteed a victory for Mark Meadows, and that he will do, quote unquote, just fine. So, knowing Donald Trump's track record, you almost got this thing locked up.
Yeah, I think so. He's certainly not showing any sign of a campaign effort here in this district. It's baffling. I guess he feels like that. The gerrymandered district that he has won in 3 previous races, that he's just going to skate through. And but the courts have ordered that the district maps be redrawn next year, so he knows that even if he does win, which he's not, if he were to win this election, the next time around wouldn't happen for sure. But I think Mr. Meadows has higher aspirations. I think he's already got his head in the clouds for a higher office, and he's not even thinking about the fact that we're sneaking up right behind him, and we're going to pull the seat right out from under him when the music stops. So Phil, we talked to you before the primaries. You won the primaries. Now you're going to the general election, and after you win the primary, you're supposed to get financial support from the Democratic Party, especially against a guy like Mark Meadows, who's literally one of the most right-wing people in all of Congress. So, have they given you financial support? No, we're not getting any support from the state party or the national party. But we've been doing some. Our fundraising has been exceptional, and we've been getting money from people all over the country ever since Meadows started talking about impeaching Rod Rosenstein. We raised about $30,000 or $40,000 in the week after they made that ridiculous move right before the summer break, and we've been getting money from really people all over the country. I'm getting really nice notes from people who are saying that they, Meadows has crossed the line. Meadows is a threat to our democracy, and we've looked up who's running against him, and we read about your platform, and we think you're a great guy, and you're the guy to beat him, and we support your campaign. And I'm getting numerous letters and donations from people, like I said, all over the country, individuals, as well as people in my district. I'm getting great support from people all across the 16 counties of this vast district of Western North Carolina. It's very encouraging and very, very cool.
Yeah, so we have a sponsor at downticket.com. The only reason I mention them in this context is because one of their theses is that if you can track the people who you can't stand,
and give to their opponents, they have a better chance of losing. And boy, you're like a perfect candidate for that. Because Mark Meadows, look, I want people to understand, it's not just that he's a right-wing zealot, and it's not just that he is, he's a fraud. He's actually just doing whatever his corporate donors want, the Koch brothers want, etc. But to me, the thing you just mentioned, Philip, is the most important part. When he then tries to help Donald Trump subvert the rule of law, to me that's a threat to our democracy. And if you're a patriot in North Carolina, then you got to vote against Mark Meadows. Because Republican or Democrat, you can't have people saying, I don't care about the Constitution, I don't care about democracy, I'm going to put party over country.
Right, if after 9/11 happened and we had, an investigation, as we did, into who, why, when, where that happened, if we had a group of congressmen led by somebody like Mark Meadows come forward and say, we need to stop this investigation, we need to shut this down, at the very minimal, it would be obstruction of justice. I mean, I don't want to use the word that I think it would be, but it's ludicrous. What does Mr. Meadows have to hide, and why is he afraid to have this investigation continue to its fruition and find out what the facts are for the American people? It's mind-boggling, to say the least. And all the while that Mr. Meadows has got himself in this, got his head all in that cloud, he's doing nothing for his constituents. He's doing nothing for the people of Western North Carolina. We have people that are hungry and people that need health care, and all he wants to talk about is taking away health care from people, repealing the Affordable Care Act, of which I am a recipient. We have 45,000 families in Western North Carolina who get their health care through the Affordable Care Act. We have 98,000 people in the 11th District who get their health care through Medicaid. And we have a high number of veterans here in Western North Carolina. Mr. Meadows has co-sponsored the Veterans Empowerment Act, which, if it were passed, would do away with the VA within a year of it passing. And I just don't understand it. I support a Medicare for all system. We need everybody covered. We don't need to take people off of health care. We need to get everybody covered. And Mr. Meadows and I just stand on way opposite sides of most of the issues that are at the front of this campaign.
Well, Philip, one of the reasons we appreciate you having back, and perhaps why the DNC does not appreciate you as much, is because you're not switching your positions after the primary. And you're sticking with what you got. And this is a historically red district, but good news for you is Medicare for All is now polling 52% with Republican voters, let alone 70% overall in the general population. So I wanted to ask you about your experience about that, because this is where we learn the most. So, look, oftentimes people will be relying on the Affordable Care Act or will want health care for their family, but they'll believe the hype that the Republicans are going to somehow do something better than Obamacare when all they have is a plan to destroy it and nothing to replace it. And we'd go back to a system that was even worse. So have people gotten that message yet? Or when you talk to them, you go door knocking and go talk to your constituents, is that not yet clear for them in that district?
It's increasingly becoming clear. Obviously, the people, the Democrats and the independents, the unaffiliated, it's crystal clear for them, or for most of the unaffiliated, I would say. The message is becoming clearer and clearer, and we are doing everything we can to get that message to the people in the district. It's such a vast, as I mentioned before, my district is almost 7,000 square miles. It takes me over 4 hours to drive across my district, and since I've spoken to you, I've put many more miles on that truck you just showed. I've got probably 45,000 miles I've put on my vehicle going around to the 16 counties, listening to the people in Western North Carolina. And healthcare is the number one issue. And it's not just about healthcare. My platform is about bringing better jobs and bigger paychecks to the people of Western North Carolina. And healthcare is just one of the 4 planks that I'm suggesting that of how we can do that. That's healthcare, public education, protecting our environment and getting off of fossil fuels and investing in renewable energy, and just infrastructure jobs, especially getting broadband internet to every household that has electricity and every nook and cranny and every holler in Western North Carolina. And you'd be surprised how many households in my district don't have access to broadband internet. We're in the 21st century, and it's essential to economic growth and to educational opportunities. Our children, they don't even make textbooks anymore. They expect your kids to go home and be able to get online to do their homework and their research. And if you don't have internet access, then your child is being left behind, and that's just not acceptable. I hear story after story of families taking their children, if they're lucky enough to not be working their second or third job, to take their kids to the library, the public library that might have Wi-Fi after hours, and they'll park in the parking lot so their kid can get online and do their homework. And that's just not acceptable. We want job growth. We want opportunities for people to connect to the internet. The internet is knowledge, and knowledge is power. So we need to provide that for the people. But back to the healthcare, it'll be such a boon to our economy to go to a Medicare for All system. People just don't understand how important it is, and the rest of the industrialized world has some type of universal health care, and that's successful. The narrative of the Republican Party is that it's not good and they're failing, and that's just a lie put out by the for-profit health insurance industry to scare people from backing a single-payer Medicare for All system. We just have to continue to break that lie.
So, and Philip, the part that almost nobody talks about is if you did Medicare for All across the country, your wages would skyrocket because employers then wouldn't have to pay for your health insurance, and then they could increase your salaries, and that's how the market works. So.
And it benefits the employers also. Yes. It takes that burden off of them, and it's not just health care. There's liability insurance and workers' comp insurance. All those things have health care as part of that premium. I'm a small business owner, and I have to purchase a liability policy and a workers' comp policy in any business that isn't in business. Even large corporations, Walmart and Lowe's, and all these people who have many, many employees, they have a huge liability policy and workers' comp policy, and the cost of those premiums would be lowered drastically as we go to a Medicare for All system.
Yeah, you
would help in so many ways.
You might be able to increase your employees' salaries by up to 20%. If we did Medicare for All. Can you imagine a 20% pay raise for everyone in the country?
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Wages.
That's right. Okay. So we're out of time, but I want everybody to know the website, although you did do a clever job putting it in the background too. But Price.
Can you see it?
Yeah, we saw Price for WNC.org as you see there, and obviously the links to donate and to volunteer and to get involved are right there, and they'll also be in the description box or comment section down below in YouTube or Facebook. Philip Price, as we said last time, the price is right, so go get it.
Thank you, Jake. I'm just asking people to please donate whatever you can to this campaign, because Mark Meadows has to go away. We're going to put Meadows out in pasture.
I like that kind of fun. All right, Philip. We'll see you next time. Hopefully next time you're in Congress.
Thank you, brother. Have a good evening.
You too. All right, guys, we're out of time. We'll see you in the postgame. TYT.com/join to get all our shows, including the postgame at Old School.